Loudspeaker Studios. Loudspeaker Studios.
This is Talkin Troma with your host, Zach Pines. The flags are flown at half-mast in Tromaville right now, as we have lost a major important voice of our community. Doug Sakmann has passed away at the age of 43. Doug was known in the Tromaverse for his work as a production assistant, then promoted to a producer on Citizen Toxie. He then worked in the office spearheading projects like Troma's Edge TV, organizing volunteers for the Troma Dance and Cannes Film Festivals. His experience at the Cannes Film Festival was well documented in All the Love You Can, which shows Doug promoting Troma on the French Croisette. For myself and others, this was a pretty formative moment captured on film and video. Lloyd showed us that we all could make our own damn movie, and Doug showed us that it was accessible to be part of the Troma team. Causing mayhem in France, donning the Sergeant Kabuki Man costume, all in the name of independent cinema. His punk rock ethos made working for Troma look like the coolest fucking thing you could do, and all of us weirdos had a place that we could call home. After All the Love You Can, Doug worked in the Troma LA offices, working on the reshoots from Tales from the Crapper. He spearheaded the Tromaville on Tour movement alongside the Vans Warped Tour. That led into him creating the infamous Backseat Conceptions production bus, a converted school bus that was a mobile production office where he followed the Warped Tour around, filming the slasher cult classic Punk Rock Holocaust, a film where a slasher follows the Warped Tour around, murdering several punk bands. It was followed up with a sequel and a third that was not completed. But not resting on his punk rock laurels, Doug made his stamp, a mushroom stamp if you will, on the adult film industry, with such films as Repenetrator, Triple Exorcist, and Evil Head, with Repenetrator even winning an AVN award for the most outrageous sex scene. The call came again from Tromaville, and Sakmann returned, giving the production of Return to Nukem High a much-needed shot of energy in the arm. Donning the Kabuki Man cape and cowl again for Kabuki Man's Cocktail Corner, and even joining the crew on #Shakespeare Shitstorm. His body of work can even be seen in the reboot of Unsolved Mysteries and several music videos from bands such as Cannibal Corpse and CKY. But that's just his resume. Doug meant a lot to a lot of people. You could count on him for advice or an ear on set. Doug was a friend to many, and in my opinion, inspired a lot of young filmmakers not just to make their own movies, but how to make their own movies, from the many special features he produced showing just that. I've reached out to some of his friends and colleagues to share some memories about him.
Hi, I'm Liam Regan, and I am the writer and director of Eating Miss Campbell and Madly Banjo, and I also worked on Return to Nukem High, Volume 1 and 2, and Occupied Cannes, and #Shakespeare Shitstorm with the one and only Doug Sakmann. Being a kid of the 90s, I would watch the TV show Troma's Edge TV, which was designed for the UK market, and it would play on Channel 4 every Friday night in the early hours in the morning. It was great, obviously Trent Hager from Terra Firma and Tiffany Shepis from Romeo and Juliet hosted. But then there was this new guy, a guy called Doug Sakmann, who in the Troma's Edge TV episode about Troma Dance, it was talking about how he got arrested for yelling, "Robert Redford can suck my cock," during the Sundance Festival in Park City, Utah, when Troma Dance was on at the same time. And I'm like, who is this guy? This guy is wild. He is crazy. And then Troma.com, Doug would be on there with his Kabuki Man skateboard, and he had the Troma tattoos, which I have the same Troma tattoos in the same place, at least, of Toxie and Kabuki Man on my arms, like Doug Sakmann did. And then when I met Lloyd Kaufman for the first time in Leicester in 2002 in the UK, it was one of the first screenings of All of You Can, the documentary. And here's Doug, dressed as Kabuki Man, wreaking havoc in France. And I'm like, as a 16-year-old kid, this guy is trauma embodied. Hilarious. If no one's seen All of You Can, I recommend it. It's one of Trauma's best offerings on Trauma Now. And I was lucky enough to work with Doug in 2012 on Return to Nukem High. And then the following year, we went to Cannes together. Great to see Kabuki Man back in Cannes during the Occupy Cannes movement, and again on Shitstorm, where I helped him with the special effects and whatever else I could. And Doug changed a lot in those years. I saw him on Edge TV and the Trauma documentaries, just wreaking havoc, to a dedicated member of the team, of the Trauma team. He came a long way, and it's just so sad that we lost somebody so soon and so suddenly. He was a larger-than-life character, much like Blade Braxton, and it's sad that Trauma's losing a lot of, it's family, the Trauma team's family, and it sucks. There's no other way to describe it. And, I don't know. I don't know what to say apart from, we all love Doug, and we're all going to miss him, and there's never going to be another Doug Sakmann. He was a law unto himself, and he had a huge heart. Kabuki Man forever.
What we're about to present, myself and Chris, is a mostly raw interview that we did with Doug. Chris?
Yeah, we recorded this interview on July 8th, 2023, and the goal was to capture some of the stories and behind-the-scenes tales from Doug's time in Tromaville, all the way from the beginning up to his work on Shakespeare's Shitstorm, which was the final Troma movie that Doug worked on. And we spent a good couple of hours with Doug reminiscing and trading stories, and you'll hear a lot of those in today's episode.
It's not the typical interview format as much as it's a roundtable conversation, as we were and still are planning on using parts of Doug's interview for future episodes. But we thought everybody out there would love to hear some of these stories from Doug, and it's not fair for us just to keep them secret.
Right. We had no idea when we recorded this interview almost a year ago that it would be the last time we spoke with Doug. So, we're hoping to do justice to a person who meant a lot to, as Zach said earlier, a lot of people, us included.
I think with that, Doug would want us to dry our tears and laugh along to some of these stories. And in the infamous words of the green hair punker, Robert Redford can suck my cock, and here's a Talkin Troma interview with Doug Sakmann. Have you watched Were Deer yet?
I've seen, pretty much a full cut of it, but not like the final cut. It's pretty incredible.
Same here. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. I actually worked on it and did a lot of the special effects with like the middle section of the movie. Eric Fox did the deer head and the deer effects, but he sent that to them. Yeah. And then I was on set doing all of the blood effects for the most part. So I did a lot of the penis,
like in the tent scenes, and everything.
The whole tent, all the stuff in the tents. Pretty much the bloodiest scenes. I did all the blood for.
Real quick, can I get you to just do a quick introduction of yourself and like what Troma movies you worked on?
Okay. My name is Doug Sakmann. I am a producer director working with Troma Entertainment for the last 25 years now. It's pretty insane. Troma's coming up on 50 years, and I've been there for half of it. Unintentionally, somehow, ended up in Tromaville.
So I've seen you in a bunch of like the behind the scenes and all sorts of stuff. One thing I've never known is what was your introduction to Troma?
My introduction to Troma was just younger, watching a lot of crazy monster movies and horror movies in my friend's house. And then we went to a street fair in New York City. And at the time I was probably 14 years old, maybe going on 15. And I would sneak into Manhattan from my house in Queens. And there was this, I guess it was a big street fair. And I looking back at it, because I was so young, I started working with Troma officially 3 or 4 years later. So it was like a street fair that Troma had a booth, and they had all of those slicks, the 8.5 by 11 movie posters, and they're giving them for free. And I was 14 years old, and I just took one of every single one of them and went home, and we just tried to find as many of them as we could.
Do you remember the first Troma movie you watched?
I mean, of Lloyd's movies, it was definitely The Toxic Avenger.
Yeah.
And for other Troma movies, it's hard to say, because probably at the time I didn't know they were even Troma movies, you know?
Yeah. No, I could dig that.
The way I got involved with working with Troma was I had a fanzine called I'm an Evil Carrot, and I was obsessed with Troma, so I interviewed Lloyd for that, and he was saying, like, we're getting ready to work on a new movie, The Toxic Avenger 4, and I was like, okay, I'd love to be involved. I was starting to work as an actor. Then I had actually, at that point, been on like some more mainstream stuff like Oz on HBO and Stranger with Candy and that kind of stuff. And this was like, I was 17, I think. And I started working on the Ford Toxic Avenger before I turned 18, basically. I turned 18 with Troma.
I turned 21 on Poultrygeist. So.
There you go. Yeah, so you'll always remember these landmarks when you're with the Troma team.
Yeah. So what kind of stuff did you do on Citizen Toxie?
So I was hired officially as an actor person. I wasn't an extra, but I wasn't a lead. You know, I was in the middle there. I played a special student in the opening scene of Citizen Toxie, and even that minor part, I was there for all of the auditions in the beginning, like the big rehearsals. They made me come back 3 or 4 times before they knew I got the part, you know, and just got to know the team. I wasn't officially working in the office, but I was starting to go to the production office and do all the rehearsals and stuff. And then we went up to Poughkeepsie and spent a week in that high school around this time. I think it was maybe a little bit later in July into August or something. As hot as it is now. This was 23 years ago. And no air conditioning and old school film lights in a classroom, probably about the size of the room I'm in right now, maybe a little bit bigger, and 40 to 50 people in that room. There was like 25 students, and then the Diaper Mafia comes in, the Toxic Avenger, Joe Flyshaker, Troma superstar Joe Flyshaker, Deborah Rashawn was in that scene, and I met a lot of my lifelong Troma compatriots and friends there, you know? Yaniv, Caleb, Trent.
In the behind the scenes of that, they show everybody like the special students kind of freaking out. They're like, "You be careful, or you're gonna get shot." Was that more edited that way, or were you guys like, "Oh shit, like we might actually get shot"?
It was a mix, because Lloyd is always about safety to humans. You know, so on the set, actually in every single documentary, I can attest that things are certainly a lot safer than they seem in the documentaries, because Lloyd is yelling at everyone to stop running and be safe. And, you know, I think actually in Citizen Toxie, there was a scene with a guy getting knocked off a ladder with a car, and it's covered in the documentary, but Lloyd warned against that so many times. And this kid just came in and set up the ladder and got hit by a car. But, yeah.
What other stuff did you do on Citizen Toxie?
So in Citizen Toxie, I came in as an actor. I was there for the opening scene, And then I was just upset. That was it, because I worked on all these bigger things where I'm working as an actor or an extra, sitting there for 12 hours doing absolutely nothing, going in, shooting my scene for a half hour, whatever. With Troma, if you have common sense, you can get involved pretty much anything. Like I started helping the special effects department, I was helping props, art department. I actually did a lot of stunts. I got involved with the stunts department on Citizen Doxy. So I'm actually in that movie 5 different times.
What was like one of the stunts that you did?
Down the stairs of the school a few times. Once was at the end scene with the Toxie coming into the hospital and everyone's getting attacked and that kind of stuff as he comes to the hospital. I was in the car chase scene, the Kabuki Man car chase scene through the fair. It's like crashing through a street fair. And I have like 3 different colored hair in that scene, like running from the car. And then I was in the Plastic Palace as a plastic surgery patient. So I'm actually in the mythology of that movie. I'm in Tromaville as a special student, and then in Amortville as a plastic surgery patient.
That's awesome. And from working on Citizen Toxie, is that how you got involved working in the Troma offices?
It was, yeah. I basically worked with the production of Citizen Toxie. I had a full-time job in New York at the time, too. I was working at an ad agency as an IT guy. I don't know if you ever see the IT Crowd, which came out years and years later, but that actually was my job. I was in the basement of a 30-story building that was actually a block from Troma, Ogilvy and Mather. It's like the second biggest ad agency in the world. And somehow, because I knew computers and stuff and made a connection, I was working in IT, switching out all of the old IBM computers in that entire building to the newer IBM, ghosting the drives and like updating them. And it was something that we had it down to a science, and my boss knew I was trying to do acting stuff, actually knew what Troma was, knew it was right around the corner from where we were. I'm like, yeah, go do what you got to do, and let me take off for an entire month to work on the movie. So I went up for the weekend, or the week for the classroom scene, came back, went to work for a few days, told them what was going on, and they're like, just go. I just went back.
So I know that you were Troma's head of production over there, and that job doesn't exist anymore. Like, what did that job entail? It sort of
does. It still does exist, actually, because just like how I started, you asked before. So I started in Citizen Toxie. I saw it all the way through the production, and then I think Lloyd just saw that I was capable of doing what he needed me to do and that kind of stuff. So he actually asked me to quit my job at the ad agency and matched my salary, which was insane for Troma at the time, and I think ever, to come work for him. I quit and started working for Troma maybe 3 months after the movie wrapped, something like that.
Nice.
And I think I was 18 at the time. I turned 18 July. Actually, my birthday's coming up. And just went from there as the head of production, but I'm also Lloyd's assistant. I'm also doing distribution, I'm also doing marketing. You're doing everything when you're working at Troma. So, Lloyd's got Garrett Sullivan right now, who's Lloyd's assistant, but he is technically the Troma's head of production as well, because he's running all the production there, So
what did the head of production entail? Like, what would you have to produce?
Well, actually, we had just gotten the contract for Troma's Edge TV for Channel 4 in the UK, which is the biggest television network in the UK. And at 18 years old, I was writing, producing, and directing a 20-episode series for Channel 4 in the UK, because they got some money for it. I don't know how much money they got for it, but I was the one that was running it. I wasn't getting paid that much, but it was...
When I interviewed Debbie, she had a lot of good things to say about the stories that you would write for Troma's Edge TV. She said that that was Doug's brainchild.
I mean, it was incredible. Debbie is a goddess of independent cinema and just in general, and to be working with her, starting out that young and directing her and producing and writing stuff for her was incredible. And she was just so all about it, and still is. She's all about the cause of independent cinema. I love Debbie so much.
So what how many episodes would you have to like churn out a week, or how did that production schedule look?
I think we did it 5 episodes at a time. It was like the first 5 were really rehashing all of the old Troma's Edge TV stuff that had been done before, but actually James Gunn had written, produced, and directed, because basically the head of production before me was James Gunn. And then Patrick Cassidy was there with James Gunn, and Trent Hager were in there, but it was kind of a transitional period where they were working on Citizen Toxie. And when the movie wrapped, they kind of went through some switches up at the office and stuff, you know?
What are some of your like favorite memories of working in the office?
Oh my God. So many. I mean, I lived there, you know, I grew up and I lived in Queens at the time, which was an hour to an hour and a half bus to a train to skateboard through Midtown Manhattan to get to Troma. So I would actually just stay there during the week sometimes. And, you know, a few other employees did the same thing because we were just so devoted to Troma. Literally, it was a party the whole time because we were doing what we loved, but we were working really hard while we were doing it, you know? So they appreciated that. And even though you're not really supposed to be sleeping in office buildings, they reluctantly allowed it because they knew that we were doing what they needed us to do, you know?
So did you have to fight Millie Medina for like cot space? Because I know she lived at the office a fair amount of time.
Yeah, no, we had separate floors. I was on the first floor. She was on the second floor. And then Gabe and the editors were up on the third floor. And they slept there, definitely, because they were doing all-nighters, editing Citizen Toxie and Troma's Edge TV and all that stuff. Millie was doing mail orders on the second floor. And I was on the first floor doing marketing stuff like graphic design, call sheets, getting stuff ready to shoot the next day. Like literally, I would do production all night, and then in the morning, we'd have a bunch of actors and crew show up, and we'd go out into the streets of Manhattan and just shoot Troma's Edge TV.
So you're doing all this, and do you remember how much you were being paid?
My salary was, I think, $500 or $600 a week, which was at the time huge for a 17 going on 18-year-olds, and it was pretty much what I was making at the ad agency as well. You know, I guess that's after taxes, so I think I was making more. That's what I walked away with.
Right on.
So when you were at the office, like, was there a typical day, or what would as typical as a Troma day could look like in the office? What would that be?
Half the time being woken up by Maris, Michael's wife, you know, sleeping in a sleeping bag on the floor, and like, you got to get up. People are coming into the office. So wrap up the sleeping bag. Sometimes it was the killer condom costume. Before I had a sleeping bag, I slept in the killer condom costume. And then I got a sleeping bag, and I had that for a while. And then Karen Black, who is an incredible, famous actress who, she's huge friend of Lloyd and the Troma team, RIP. She's passed for a number of years now, but she was going on a camping trip and she needed a sleeping bag. And Lloyd knew I had a sleeping bag, and he's like, "Oh, you can lend Karen Black your sleeping bag." And it's like, all right, I gave it to her. I never saw it again. So I went back to the killer costume.
If it's any consolation, I drove Karen Black around in my car that had a bucket of blood that like tipped over in the front seat. So,
oh my God. Yeah, no, I mean, she can, obviously the sleeping bag it's water under the bridge. She's an incredible bastion of independent cinema.
That's awesome. And how many of like the DVD special features were you involved in filming at that time?
Pretty much everything. It was just Lloyd at his desk. We were shooting Troma's Edge TV at the time, so if you watch a lot of the DVD intros at that time, we just had the person hold the Troma's Edge TV sign next to Lloyd, so it was part of Troma's Edge TV too, in case we wanted to use it for something else. So, I mean, if you're a Troma fan, I guess you would get the context, but for someone randomly watching the DVD, it's like, why is this guy holding a Troma's Edge TV sign next to Lloyd?
Was there any skits or sketches that like you shot or wanted to shoot that just like Lloyd or Michael were like, no, that's too extreme, too much?
No, not for Troma's HTV. There was some stuff that we shot that just didn't come out the way we thought it would, or we did a farm episode where one of our interns, who was a good friend of mine, still works with me. His name's Chris Fitzgerald. Had a farm out in Maryland, and he was like, "You got to get the Troma team to come out here. We'll show a movie. We'll do a screening. We'll shoot some of the show." And we went out there and shot some stuff, but it was like the sticks in Maryland, and everyone was shit faced drunk, so we didn't really get too much.
Yeah. And then you also are a veteran of Cannes a couple times over.
Of course, yeah.
Tell me about working with Troma at Cannes.
I mean, that was just another dream come through. I went through so many, I guess, in my formative years, 17 to 19, 20, even 21. No, I mean, I was with Troma from 98 to 2002, officially in the office. So it was just like we had a schedule of things that would come up throughout the year. So it started with the Sundance Film Fest. We'd go and do Troma Dance. And I actually started the year we started Troma Dance with Trent Hagen, Patrick Cassidy were the festival directors, and they ran the festival. I came in as Lloyd's assistant, and I wasn't fully the head of production yet because there were still so many producers within the company. But then the next year, they had gone on to other things, so I was running Troma Dance by the second year.
Actually,
So
when
it
I
was-
was in high school, I emailed you when you were running Troma Dance, and you gave me some of my first filmmaking advice ever that actually still like is good and solid advice. I made a movie, and like the VHS tape was fucked up. There was a little bit of static in there, and I said, "Does that matter?" And you wrote me back, and you said, "You're not going to go on stage and apologize for your movie in front of 1,000 people. You never see Steven Spielberg do that." And I was like, "Yeah, oh, yep, that's a fair point."
Yeah, I mean, it's part of your aesthetic for that particular movie, you know? What was the name of the movie?
That at that time it was a music video, Ghetto Man in Hollywood, and that that was a high school movie, so I don't think I ever submitted it because I took your advice to heart. It's like, you're right, now I need to just make something better next time. So eventually I made it in a Troma Dance, but and now some words from Debbie Rochon.
So I want to say thank you to Zach for inviting me to do a tribute to Doug Sakmann. It's been hard for me to record this. I'm not gonna lie. One part of me is excited to be able to celebrate Doug Sakmann, and the other part is the reality of why we are here. So it's tough, but here's the thing. Met Doug in 1999 on the set of Citizen Toxie up in Poughkeepsie, New York. And he was one of my students, Ms. Wiener's students. And I knew there was something special about him right from the day one, because he was just like all in. Whether he knew Troma before that or not, I'm sure he had an awareness. There's no doubt. But he was just... There was never a complaint, although he was like respectfully quiet at the same time because he was learning. He was taking it all in, taking it in. So he was there. He was committed. He was like willing to do whatever to make the scene, the character, everything like just pop. So you could just tell that Doug was extremely, is extremely special guy. Then it was like, it seemed immediately to me, I wasn't in the Troma office exactly, but pretty much, I mean, he moved right down to the New York City area. He started working in Troma, of course. There was a lady who was working for Troma at the same time, an older lady, and she was homeless. So a number of nights she would like sneaking sleep in the Troma offices. It was when it was in Hell's Kitchen. And so, I mean, Doug would help her. I mean, he's not the type of guy that would, insist she go or anything. He would just, he wouldn't do anything against what he was told. But at the same time, he would never, ever not help somebody. Never, never. He wasn't a climber. He wasn't a bullshitter. He wasn't obviously a liar. He wasn't any of those negative things that, all of us may experience, be it in the business or in other businesses that you just experience in life. He just wasn't that guy. No matter how successful he got or in what circles he got successful, it was never a difference in how he interacted with his same friends on any level. Everybody got the same commitment and treatment from him. And that says everything. Because as you see people go, hopefully up the ladder and become more and more successful, then they have to, I put in air quotes, be careful who they associate with, be it in person, working on projects and social media or whatever. They start recalculating their status and what may look good or what may look bad, who they may, but none of that stuff meant anything to him. And on top of all of that, he will always be thought of, remembered, loved for everything that he did, as opposed to, he got to, place A or whatever. He will be remembered far better, far greater, far more importantly in life as the amazing human being that he was. There wasn't anybody that he wouldn't help. That's rare. That's really rare. And he loved Troma. He loved his unsolved mysteries. He loved everything he was working on. He gave it 1,000%. And I can't even, it's hard to envision a world without someone like Doug, because he was like, he was and will always be the great, I don't want to say mediator, but the guy that would walk in and just make everything cool. And not because he had a facade of being cool, but because he made wherever he was so comfortable for everybody of every walk feel comfortable and great about being somewhere. And even if he was, had a frustrated moment, had any kind of a moment at all, he was always going to put on like a really positive face, because he knew that that's how you get through stuff, like be it on the set or, in his life. I mean, he introduced me to Chris Seaver and Low Budget Pictures because of Troma. We did Troma's Edge TV. He directed and shot all of the episodes that I was in. Great stuff. It was always so much fun. It was in the sloth, heat, humidity of New York City, whether we were going to like Central Park or wherever we were going, the streets in Hell's Kitchen. He just made everything fun. And no matter how hot or uncomfortable you were, it was still fun. And he made you want to give everything also like he did, because that was the vibe that he gave out. The set he created. And who wouldn't want that in their movie? Like, who wouldn't want to like have him come and be a part of their movie? Like, just because of just that X factor, that special X factor that you can't fake. And I can't say enough about Doug. And he's just like, he's always been there, either literally or in the background. And it's really hard to imagine a world without him. And he wouldn't like to hear this kind of talk, I know, but he will always be loved by all of us so very much. And you don't have this impression on people at such a young age. If you die far too young, like he did, you don't have this kind of effect on people unless you were an extremely, extraordinarily special person. And he will always be that. Always be that. And I love you forever and a day, Doug Sakmann. Love you so much.
Probably one of the more infamous things about your story and Can is between you and Scott McKinley. And I'm sure you knew this was going to come up.
As I was getting ready for this interview, I figured you were going to ask something about Scott, and I'm fully prepared to answer anything, So
I saw online that you said that there's so much more that the documentary didn't capture. But how much of what in All the Love You Can between you and Scott was real, and how much was for the cameras?
That was all real. Everything in the movie is real, except there's much more that's missing.
So how did the animosity between you and Scott start? Because we're just dropped in the middle of the story there.
And a lot of these documentaries, there's actually something in the Shitstorm documentary that I don't know if you guys have seen that yet. It's going to be coming out widely soon.
I have.
And if you saw it, there's a whole thing with me at the end. I won't say too much. Maybe I'll ask you later about it, but I felt that the context wasn't there for the reason I was reacting like that. And they put a little bit more in there, but there was so much more to that story that no one will ever know because it's just not there. They just want the exciting parts that, they don't want to have to spend an hour explaining one situation in the movie, so.
But that's what podcasts are for. So
help
us fill in the rest of the story.
Because it's, to start with, All the Love You Can is over 3 years at the Cannes Film Festival. It's not 1 year. So that animosity built up over 3 years at the Cannes Film Festival. But overall, it was just our dynamic. I was the younger, punkier kind of upstart that was down to do anything and do all the street promotions and grittiness that Lloyd wanted. And Scott was the older guy who was really good at talking and getting money from sponsors. And that was the only reason he was still at Troma. Lloyd knew he was a shithead. Everyone knew. We called him Hollywood Dick to his face. He knew he was a dick. And he actually, it comes across the documentary, but he would constantly, when we were doing these promotions, whether at Troma Dance or the Cannes Film Festival, he would bring his girlfriend out and sit up on the cafe and watch us do our promotions and laugh and point at us and stuff. And it was kind of I knew why he was there and I respected why he was there, but that didn't mean I had to like the guy, So, and Lloyd hated him too. Michael, I'm sure, hated him too, but he was Michael's boy. That's the thing about Troma. It's a team, but Lloyd handles the creativity and insanity, and Michael handles the business and money, really. Lloyd gets involved too, and they both do both, but Michael Hers is a lawyer. Michael Hers is Troma's lawyer, so he knows the ins and outs of everything and how to get the money, how to write the contracts, and Scott was his dog, basically.
Yeah, that's one thing I think that is kind of a misconception about the company. When people ask me about it, I'm like, yeah, Lloyd is definitely the figurehead and the person at the top creatively, but Troma, from day to day, is Michael's company. It really is. And so much, nothing gets done there without Michael's okay. And Lloyd defers to Michael all the time on things. It
is sort of not exactly equal, but Michael Hers is certainly the reason the company is still in business. Definitely. But Lloyd does, they are equals in that way. They for the last 50 years, they've sat in a very small room with two desks facing each other. And they just, it's the odd couple. Lloyd's desk is totally destroyed, has every Troma prop, every piece of paperwork saved on his desk. It's a mountain of garbage and traumatic goodness. And then Michael's is nothing. There's a few, whatever he's working on for the day, very clean, exact opposite, It's the yin and the yang that Lloyd always talks about. That is why that company still exists. I've been in business situations where I've had partners with the yin and yang and see work in that way. But the second the balance goes off, it just doesn't work anymore,
Did you interact with Scott much after the All the Love You Can documentary came out?
Yeah, so let me kind of go over that a little bit more because I want to, I'll tell you whatever you want to know.
I want to know the whole saga here.
Well, basically, it's partly in there. I hadn't watched the movie in probably 10, 15 years, and I watched it recently, and I never cringe at any of this stuff. If I do something, it's for a reason, or I don't, even if it's a little cringeworthy. Whatever. It's out there for a reason. Whatever. Lloyd, if Lloyd thought it was funny, that's why it's there. I didn't really have too much of a say. Not that I interjected myself, but in the editing of those movies. That was all Gabe Friedman, Sean, I forgot his last name.
McGrath.
Sorry, Sean. McGrath. There you go. Sean McGrath. Brian McNulty, who actually, Brian McNulty has stepped in and is working on the sequel to All the Love You Can right now with the Kaufman daughters. Lily Hayes, Charlotte, and Lisbeth are directing and producing a sequel to All the Love You Can. And Brian McNulty came back in to help them finish editing it. It's insane. It's so crazy. I had no idea. I took a break in the office and worked with Troma full time for probably 10 years. I always, every time Lloyd shot a movie, I was there. If he asked me to come help out with something, I was there. But I was starting my own company and getting my own stuff going. And I guess Nukem High, Return to Nukem High was my return to Tromaville in 2012. And I've been working pretty consistently with them since, getting more and more involved. So, and that was, again, I was going up for a weekend to make a cameo and just kind of see what was going on. And, for me, it was like, I never left and I wanted to stay. And then Lloyd was like, you have to stay. And I canceled my plan for the summer and I stayed.
But back onto the...
I'm getting ahead of myself. So Scott.
No, you're good.
So he ran the Troma LA office, which if you've seen the Tales from the Crapper documentary, that is what the Troma LA office was. It was a frat house. It literally was filled with people who were from... Because I never went to college too, so I never had that fraternity mentality, I guess. Troma was my college. That's why it was so insane, I think. This was my Animal House, pretty much,
Yeah.
And we had all of these guys that were older than me, had gone to college or fresh out of college, like had the frat boy mentality. It's literally like hang out, bongs on the desk, like office filled with smoke. When I was there, I was younger, I was cool. They would drink and do everything in front of me. And then when they knew Lloyd and Michael were coming to town, everything would go away. They would clean up. It's like, we're doing our work, but they were not working when Lloyd and Michael were there, really. It was a clubhouse. It was crazy. So, and Scott was the leader of the frat, basically. When I was there, because I would go to LA and work for weeks, I would sleep in the Troma office and see what was going on. And he would come in, do a phone call with Hollywood.com, get Troma $10,000 and then leave for the day. Like, because he was making Troma a certain amount of money, he felt that he didn't have to do what everyone else was doing, And it was, I never ratted anyone out. I never told anyone what was going on, Lloyd and Michael, what was going on, because I knew they would see exactly what was going on. And if you see the Tales of the Crapper documentary, that house party was the culmination of Lloyd and the New York Troma team trying to shoot a movie while LA was doing their thing in the middle of it.
Was there kind of a rivalry between the New York and LA offices?
It wasn't so much a rivalry, because even Scott I respected. We like the stuff that's in the documentary. There seems a little bit more animosity, but we would, curse each other and fuck around with each other in a fun way. He knew why I was there, and I think he respected me to a certain extent, but he didn't like how I went about it, I guess, But he wasn't the boss. Lloyd was the boss, and if I was doing something wrong, I wouldn't still be working with Troma. So it's hard to tell. There's so many things that happen. It's hard to tell the timeline. But just going back to the Troma office, Adam Jenke actually ran the Troma office. He was Scott's assistant, and he was in the middle of this trying to hold it together and be the straight-laced guy and actually be the Michael Hers of the office. It was like Scott was the Lloyd of the Troma LA office, and Adam Jenke was the Michael Hers. But Scott had no creativity. Adam was also helping write Lloyd's books, writing the movies, writing reshoots for Citizen Toxie. And then John Santos was his assistant, and I was boys with him too. I haven't talked to him in years. I'm sure if I saw him, it would be like old times, but he was alcoholic. He was destroying things, So, he worked with Troma for 3 years, and then in the documentary, I think I was the one that told him, get a honeydew melon and he came back with a watermelon.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Gabe couldn't incriminate me in that one, but he put me in with them as much as possible, so it looks like I'm a part of what they're doing. And that's something else. Gabe, who, again, I love to death, but he was sort of a Scott McKinley type for me too, because he would edit things, the worst parts of when we would go out and do something, and then show it to Michael Hurst trying to get me fired. And then Lloyd would put it on a DVD. You know, I don't want to get into these specific moments right now, but there were 3 things that any other office in the world, I would have definitely been fired. And it was almost like I got a promotion.
Yeah, I definitely got the sense, even from like conversations with him, that like, you know, setting aside the Troma LA thing for a second, like there was definitely like some serious animosity between you and Gabe for whatever reason.
Well, I mean, I was talking to his daughters about this a little while back. It was the reason that he went to NYU, he graduated NYU, he was an editor, much older than me. I come in as a 17, 18-year-old, and then I'm going to the Cannes Film Festival, I'm going to Tromanance, I'm going to all these things, and he has to sit back and edit it. He didn't go to any of those things, you know? It was a very slowly bitterness that was, I mean, him and Scott had similar mentalities where however they felt was right on their face. They weren't hiding it. I could tell that he was reluctantly working with me, and we became friends, especially even more after working at Troma, I would say, because there was this just level of stress and stuff that I knew was there. They weren't telling me, but they were telling the bosses about. And then the boss was like, he's not doing anything wrong. You know, like, why are you trying to do this? You know? So
there was definitely, I mean, as someone who came into the company in 99, there was definitely a lot of people kind of jockeying for position, which I didn't quite understand, because there wasn't like a corporate ceiling at Troma. Like, regardless of what your job title was, like everybody did a bit of everything. I never quite understood why there was so much like sort of infighting. And I was glad, being out in Colorado, that I could avoid most of it. All
of it was because of Tromaville.com. It was a separate company. We were shooting Citizen Toxie, Lloyd's project, Michael's project was Tromaville.com. They would sit at the desks across from each other and make, your actor's missing for today? That's fuck you, Lloyd, ha ha ha. It's like, well, your website's going to crash today. Like, they would just fuck with each other back and forth, you know, but like in a joking way. But they, I think, had animosity against each other for the projects they were trying to do. Like, Michael's like, Lloyd, you don't need to make another fucking movie. Like, let's put all our money into this .com thing. And Lloyd's like, no, like, let's make a movie. We don't know the .com thing. We know how to make movies, you know?
Well, and I don't know if Zach shared with you, but one of the big episode stories that we're working on is kind of the rise and quick fall of Tromaville.com. So
I was there for all of it.
Yeah. So if you could kind of talk about like the gestation of that project and like how it came to be and what your role in it was.
Well, it was Scott McKinley, Andrew Lerner, who was also an executive producer on Citizen Toxie, and the LA office. The Troma LA office was specifically built to house Tromaville.com. And then Tales from the Crapper was the end of that after Tromaville.com declared bankruptcy. So they tried to keep the LA office going for a while, but it just wasn't worth it because they didn't have, it was, you know, at one point it had 20 computers in it. And there were 20 people working at those computers doing flash animation, coding websites, doing all this stuff. And then Lloyd would walk through and just be like, what the fuck are these people doing? Why are we paying these people this much? He knew, but he didn't, you know, he was always, even when we shot Return to Nukem High, that was the first time we actually shot one of Lloyd's features on digital. Everything else had been 16 or 35 millimeter, mostly 35 with some 16. And he was kind of beholden to the director of photography because he didn't know how to work these new digital cameras that way. You know, the little ones that you just have to press record are fine. He can shoot a documentary all day, but when you're trying to make it look like an actual movie, he had to let and still, you know, he has DPs that he has to trust a little bit more because he can't just take the camera from them if they're not doing what they want and shoot it himself. And I saw that in his eyes and the way he was acting. He kind of felt a little defeated on Return to Nukem High because the fucking DP was an asshole.
That definitely came across in the documentary. Well, and it's kind of like, it seems like a common thread on Troma movies in general. Like on Poultrygeist, it was the Troma team versus Brendan Flint and his crew, and it sounded like Return to Nukem High was the Troma team versus the DP and his crew. Was that can you say, was that similar to like Citizen Toxie or even Shitstorm?
Yeah, it's a weird thing, but it's true. I mean, I've seen it in other productions too. It's like when you have this amazing thing like the Troma team and you're making a Troma movie and everyone is so positive. We're here to sweep on the floor and make a movie. We don't care what we're making. We don't care how much we're making. We care about what we're making. And then you have someone like the DP, I guess you would say. Brendan Flint, I didn't have any issues with, but Lloyd, it was Brendan started on Troma and Juliet, then he did Citizen Toxie, and Poultrygeist. He probably shouldn't have come back for it, but he needed the money.
He shouldn't have.
That's what happened there. Even on Citizen Toxie, Brandon was the sore thumb in that, but he was still having a good time. So I think that's why it was such a good experience. There wasn't any one person that was like, this is the asshole that everyone has to deal with, And it's not so much against. By the end of it, it is everyone's against them, but it's like, okay, we know that we don't have this much money. This person is skilled. They know what they're doing. So we have to respect them, and they're here to work with us. And then when they treat us like shit, how do they expect us to react to it,
Greetings from Tromaville. It's your old pal, Uncle Lloydie here. And I want to thank Zach Beans for a wonderful Talkin Tromaville. This is 50 years of Troma, and you're chronicling a wonderful company that is challenging the evil cartels in the media. So thank you, Zach. And I know we lost Doug Sakmann recently. He was obsessed with the Kabuki Man. Doug Sakmann was the son I never had, my Troma son, let's put it that way. We worked together from 1999 when he was 16 in Citizen Toxie through shortly before his unfortunate death. So very grateful to Doug. I know he was obsessed with Kabuki Man Returns, and if we can get a good script, I can scrape together $400 in honor of Doug. He had a $2 million investor somewhere, but I don't know who that was. So we'll vow to put up $400,000 if we can get a good script. And April Wallen, Doug liked, and hopefully she'll be able to put together a script that Doug will be proud of. And Troma will continue to be the shit disturbers that for which Doug trained me. He was the greatest shit disturber of all time, also possibly the most idealistic. So Doug, ave atque vale, goodbye and farewell, as the Romans used to say. Thank you.
So going back to Tromaville.com, like, what was your understanding of what that project was supposed to be?
It was a hub for the weird websites of the internet to come through as an affiliate website. At the heart of it was they were taking the hits from other popular websites and incorporating it into their one website so they could say they're getting 1 million hits on their website. That was the basic
for an advertising platform, right?
For an advertising platform. So Newgrounds.com was the number one client, and there was some exchange of money going on there. I don't know. I wasn't involved in any of that stuff, but it was, Tom Fulp was our number one client. He was the master of Tromaville because of the amount of hits and, eyes he could bring to Tromaville.com. And then, on Lloyd's side of it, my side of it, he was just a cool guy, and what he was doing was amazing. And then, then they had Michael and Scott and those guys come in and get them as, it was a fair that's the thing. I can't speak too much on what the actual affiliate thing was, but from someone who knew what was going on as an outsider looking into the actual parameters of the project, that's exactly what was going on. You know, I mean, Tromaville.com has 3 million hits today. No one's going to Tromaville.com.
Yeah. So I had, in some of our research, we found that there was at least one claim that there was over $5 million of investment in Tromaville.com.
That sounds totally legit.
Because did that come from Lloyd and Michael, or did that come from outside?
No.
You know?
It was all outside. It was, because Troma at the time had the Ford Toxic Avenger movie. It was their second or third or fourth renaissance. Every 10 years, Troma has a renaissance. It's coming up again with the Toxic Avenger remake. It's going to be in the public consciousness, and everyone wants a piece of Troma somehow. And this time, they were ready. They're like, okay, we're joining the .com boom with Tromaville.com. We're going to have this hub of all this stuff. On the outset, it looked like a great idea, and the website was cool. There was some cool stuff on it, but it was wasn't done in the way that Lloyd makes one of his movies. I think that's the easiest way to explain it. It was reverse engineered. It was like, this is going to be big now, so we're going to do this, rather than we're doing this because we want to. We want to make another fourth Toxic Avenger movie, you know?
Yeah. So you mentioned that like Troma LA was started because of Tromaville.com, and that the people who were hired there were originally part of that project. So was that something that was just kind of like run entirely by Troma LA? Because I remember that there was also a Tromaville.com office in New York that
there
was
were two. Yeah,
that was like across the street from 733 9th.
I think we expanded it. It started the third floor was the editing, and then they pushed the editors to the back room and put 10 computers up on the third floor, and there were people working there. And then when it got too much, they rented a building across the street, expanded it over there. So it was Tromaville.com, Troma Team Video, which was a separate section, separate employees running it, that did the mail order and put together the DVDs and videos. And then there was a full graphics section too. We had 3 or 4 graphic designers working for us, because they were doing stuff for the box covers, they were doing stuff for DVD menus, they were doing stuff for Tromaville.com, and they were working back and forth between Troma and Tromaville, basically.
So when you know, I like to think of Tromaville.com as something that was in the right place at the wrong time, because like they were primed to kind of take advantage of this internet boom. But then, of course, all of the internet stocks collapsed in 2001, 2002. Like, what was the vibe like in the office at that time? Like, how did people react? Like, what, you know, how did that kind of go down?
So that's the thing. I was so out of Tromaville.com and so in Lloyd's world of traveling with him. We were doing promotion for Citizen Toxie. We were doing a screening, you know, just like every other one of his movies. This movie isn't opening everywhere in one weekend. We're traveling around the world with it for 2 years, you know? And that's one of the issues with even Shitstorm. And compounded with the pandemic, it just takes so long for these movies to get out, because Lloyd wants to be there and needs to be there when it screens in order to maximize the sales and the popularity of the movie, you know?
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't noticed, I go off on a lot of different tangents because my head is just so filled with everything.
That's all right, man. I mean, that's why we're trying to like extract from the sponge, you know? That's the beauty of the medium. So, I mean, but like, this was an important, like a very important time in Troma's history. I would even say like perhaps the most important time in its history, because
go ahead.
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because you had Lloyd's book coming out, you had Terror Firmer coming out, you had Citizen Toxie in production, you had Tromaville.com going, you had Troma's Edge TV in production. Like, this seemed to be the time that if Troma was ever going to become a more mainstream brand, this would have been the time that it happened. And for whatever reason, I mean, you know, any number of reasons, it just kind of, it did, and then it didn't, you know, it started and seemed like it was having a ton of momentum, and then things just kind of fizzled a bit. And like, what's important too about like this conversation is like, you were there for all of that. So
yeah, well, I think it was all based around Citizen Toxie, the fourth Toxie Avenger movie. And all the Troma's Edge TV came because of that. Troma.com came as a way to capitalize off of that. We actually shot the final scenes for Citizen Toxie as part of, I think Tromaville.com paid for it. All of the Playboy Mansion scenes we shot. Well, it's a newsreel in Citizen Toxie, but we did a day of shooting at the Playboy Mansion, and it was live stream on the internet. I'd say live stream because this was, Troma was always trying to be ahead, and is ahead of technology. So they were doing DVD extras before anyone was doing DVD extras, and they were trying to do the first live webcasts at the Playboy Mansion while we're shooting Citizen Toxie, and I think that was like the maximum number of employees Troma ever had, because it was separate crews coming in to run satellite dishes, and it was this was in France too. Back in the day, you'd have a guy with a laptop with straps, and then he'd have a webcam on top of it, and he would be walking around with a laptop, and that would be the webcam thing, but this could have some. I wasn't privy to the numbers and how it went down and in what way, but I think it was supposed to be a full day webcast, and I don't think any of it got up there. Maybe 5-10 minutes of it or something. They had so many issues that might have been part of. They dumped a lot of money into it too, and it was sponsored by Tromaville.com. They just thought more money was going to be coming or something.
I remember actually a couple of weeks ago, Zach and I were going through stuff, and I actually dug up the original press release about the webcast. So it was like November 15th, 1999 or something like that was like the big Tromaville.com day for the Citizen Toxie webcast. And I had just been hired a couple of months before that. I was hired in April of 99. So I remember like monitoring the webcast and it going up and then it immediately going down. And then
because no one can see it. They go to it, they click it, and it didn't work, so they just go do something else.
That was me. I would go and clicked on it as I think I did school that day.
So on the Playboy Mansion stuff, so like that's an interesting thing as well, and this kind of dovetails us into Tales from the Crapper a little bit. So correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. My understanding is that part of the way we were able to get the Playboy Mansion was through India Allen, who was a Playboy playmate.
She was the connection.
Yeah, she was the connection. And she had also produced like the Rowdy Girls for Troma, and kind of acted as like a liaison between us and Playboy. But later on, after Citizen Toxie, like we made this deal with India Allen to produce Tales from the Crapper. What do you remember about Tales from the Crapper and how that was done?
I might have to say no comments on that. I don't know how much you know about that situation, but she had a track record because she produced Chosen One, Rowdy Girls. They went okay. She got some Playboy Playmates in it. Then she made the connection for the Playboy Mansion. It's still, I think the location fee was like $20,000 still. It wasn't like she hooked us up with the Playboy Mansion. We still had to pay for it.
Sure.
But then, the stuff with Tales of the Crapper, basically based on her track record, they gave her money to do Troma's first digital movies, Soul Stripper, and what was the other one? Free Ride. It was only two movies, and then I think is there 2 or 3 in Tales of the Crapper?
There's two.
Only 2.
There's 2, and then there's the wraparounds with Lloyd to try to make some sense out of it.
Yeah. So basically, I'd say at least half of my time at Troma was spent trying to fix that movie. And then I left before they even shot any of the Crap Keeper stuff, because initially all that stuff in the Troma LA reshoots was when it was we were still trying to do it as 2 separate movies. It was going to be 2 separate movies, and Lloyd left it to the Troma LA team, who I guess India Allen had given them a small amount of money to produce the movies and then ran off with the rest of the money. And the thing in her budget, she put herself in the movie and then gave herself a hair budget of like $10,000 or something like that. Like weird stuff like that. That when you look in the budget, you see she's actually stealing the money right off the top. No question. And they gave it to some guys in LA who were working with her to finish it, and it just wasn't good. Lloyd hated all of it. And the footage that they got to begin with was terrible. So, but it had Julie Strain in it, and Julie Strain's amazing no matter what you do with it. So, we had to do something with it.
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
there's a lot of other stuff. Yeah,
and like all of us, like I think, like if you were to put together all of the people who did something for Tales from the Crapper, it'd be like Troma's largest crew ever, because we did reshoots for that movie for what felt like 4 years.
Oh, it was over at least 4 years.
I mean, we even shot Crapkeeper stuff in Park City for Troma Dance. Like, somebody cut a hole in a bag because we want to film Lloyd as the Crapkeeper in this shot. I'm like, what the fuck, man?
I was around for the beginning of that, and when I was we're actually leaning into. I don't think it was called Tales from the Crapper yet, but okay, we're just putting garbage bag on Lloyd. At that point, I'm like, all right, I think I might need to start doing other stuff.
Yeah, and we're gonna have him write like Crapper with his pee in the snow. That was the shot I worked on. And I looked over at Gabe because Gabe was coming to Troma Dance at that point. And I was just like, "What the fuck are we doing, man? This is so ridiculous."
I mean, Lloyd will even say it's his worst movie. It's out there because they spend enough so much. That's the difference between them and any major studio. They don't have the expense to say, okay, this is Batgirl. We're just gonna shelve it for tax reasons. That doesn't happen in Joville.
Yeah, although in retrospect, it probably should have, because when you factor in everything that was spent on that movie and what it made back in DVD sales, it was like such a worthless project.
That's true. It's very true.
And now some words from Bjarni.
On Thursday night, Friday morning, a very good friend of mine was found deceased. Doug Sakmann. I worked with Troma, started working with Troma unofficially in 2004. And that's about the time he was, he started in 1999. And I was a big fan of his work. And I met him for the first time in 2012 on the set of Return to Nukem High. And even though, to me, he was a star, he treated me like we had been best friends forever. He was one of the most down-to-earth people I've ever met. And just hearing from other people, they were both his friends and fans, he talked to everybody the same way. He was amazing. He was super talented. He was very punk. He was the epitome of punk, like for real. Like punk rock lived through him, more so than any other person I can think of. And he did the most punk rock thing he could do. He joined Troma Entertainment, the oldest independent movie company in the world, where the likes of James Gunn, Trey Parker, Eli Roth all got their start. And Doug Sakmann. I went to Cannes twice, and both times Doug Sakmann was there. And I can tell you right now, the reason it was a good trip for the huge portion of it was because of him. He lit up a room. He was the nicest person I've ever met. He was very nice to everybody. But he was also so fun to hang out with. Like, it was a party no matter what you were doing. And he made it fun. We were promoting movies. We came there to sell movies. And we would do parades. And he would, put on this costume. Sergeant Kabuki Man in YPD. Doug Sakmann took over the role, and he's been playing Kabuki Man since. He's been doing him at conventions in many, many, many movies. He did a TV show called Kabuki Man's Cocktail Corner, which I think inspired Eric Andre. The Eric Andre Show. And he was writing a sequel, Kabuki Man Returns. And I was helping write, I was very blessed that he would think of me constantly to do things with him. And one of the things he tasked me to do was help him write Kabuki Man Returns alongside Brandon Basom and April Whalen. And he was supposed to star in that movie. And now it's very hard to think about doing that movie without him. And I don't know if, it's up to Troma what they want to do. But it was his baby. It was something he'd been working on for 7 years. And the last thing he asked me to do was write the next draft. And I feel like I owe it to him to at least do that. You know, he was one of my mentors. He was a great friend. And I think the world in general is a worse place without him. I have a Doug Sakmann story that I wanted to tell. Because Mike Jackman, the great Mike Jackman, everybody, the 5 people that listen to this, so check out Jackman Radio. Mike Jackman is one of the coolest guys ever. And he reminded me that Doug Sakmann had like an unofficial catchphrase, which was, "I'm down," because that's how positive he was. I'm down. He was just down. You could ask him anything. Like, you want to fucking go with me to Saudi Arabia? He'd be like, "I'm down." Wonderful guy. And I had a story. We were filming Return to Nukem High Volume 1, and I was talking to my friend Chelsea. And she was saying like, hey, we're gonna do this after filming, like next month. You want to be part of that? And I said, I can't, because I don't have a visa. I don't have a green card. I have an ESTA, and I've been here for 3 months. That's as long as I can stay, and then I have to get out for, how many months, and then I can come back. And she said, can't you just become a citizen? And I said, well, to do that, I would have to like marry somebody. And then I didn't even know Doug was there, but we found out he was there because he went, "I'm down. I'll get married, Jarny." And I don't think he was kidding either. Like if I said like I want to live in the United States, he would have married me.
I do want to know more about Tales from the Crapper, though. So how much of, like, I know there's like a lot of party scene reshoots. You mentioned the watermelon that got smushed. Were you in how involved in the LA office reshoots were you?
I actually put together all the stuff with Trey Parker and Ted Raimi, all that kind of stuff. I came in and helped them do the special effects, and I guess I was an assistant director. I don't know. It was like, because I wasn't there for weeks doing pre-production. I came in on top of what they were putting together. I was friends with Ted Raimi, so I had him come out. The guy who was throwing the house party, I was friends with him, and we needed to get extras in there. So I convinced Lloyd to let him throw the party in the house. So I kind of helped engineer that whole situation. But it was a collaborative effort. So it's hard to say who was doing what. I mean, I'm in the scene too, getting like shit on by a chicken egg or something.
Was there a director for any of that stuff, or was it just kind of everybody like, here's the scene, let's do it?
No, when Lloyd was there, Lloyd was directed. Lloyd wasn't there for a lot of it. And when we were doing that house party thing, Trey Parker was there, Ted Raimi was there. Lloyd was going to direct those guys, obviously, So Lloyd was directing everything on the second floor, and we were shooting on the second floor while there was a party going on the first floor. And then as we needed people, we bring them up to the second floor to shoot with them.
Gotcha.
So
I did hear something funny, I think, from one of Lloyd's old assistants when Penn Jillette was making that Aristocrats movie, that they reached out to Troma to get the Trey Parker Aristocrats joke from Tales from the Crapper, because that was the first time that was ever said in a movie.
Wow! And did they give it to him?
Michael Hers wanted too much money.
That is fucking crazy. That would have put on the map. That would have made that movie worth something.
Yeah,
that's insane. That is so fucking crazy.
That's kind of like the recurring theme with Troma, though, is like we get like a cool opportunity and then someone's decision ends up like shooting us in the foot.
Yeah, I mean, it happened with the Warped Tour when we did the Warped Tour, Troma on tour, and numerous other times. I almost got a $10,000 merchandise deal for Troma last year, and I gave it to Unsolved Mysteries instead because they wouldn't sign the contract because they wanted more. It's unfortunate. It's not Lloyd's fault. Lloyd was trying to really make it work, but
for those of us who aren't familiar, to like tell us about Tromaville on tour.
Tromaville on Tour was Troma's outing on the Vans Warped Tour in 2002. Yeah, I, think it was, I was going back and forth in my head earlier today. It was 2002, and it was something kind of a culmination of everything I had been doing with Troma at the time, because we started doing a stage show with the Citizen Toxic premieres. And this actually came from, at this point, I had taken up the mantle of Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD. I've been playing Kabuki Man now for 22 years.
So you just said you played Sergeant Kabuki Man, and that's like, I associate Kabuki Man with you. What, like, everybody I've ever met who's volunteered always wants to play Toxie, but you're Kabuki Man. Like why did you pick Kabuki Man?
I guess I relate more to the character. I don't know. The drinking, being able to drink in costume was certainly a perk of it to begin with, but it was something that it's sort of a natural progression. It went from, obviously, Rick Gianci in the first movie, and it was played in one way, and he wasn't coming back to really do, what I'm doing for Troma, obviously. And then Paul Kermsey was a graphic designer for Tromaville.com, and he would go to I think he worked for Troma before that, and then he fell into Troma because he would go to the Cannes Film Festival with James Gunn. He would play Kabuki Man and get really shit-faced and pass out in the costume. And that's where Kabuki Man being drunk started coming from, was the Kabuki Man before me, taking the public intoxication to the limits, I guess, and Lloyd liked it. And, the Kabuki Man movie wasn't as successful as they had hoped. So in Citizen Toxic, he came back as a failure. He's an alcoholic failure superhero, which is, we're trying to continue that story in Kabuki Man Returns, the sequel to Kabuki Man, which I'm sure we can talk about. There's so many different things going on.
Sorry, back to Tromaville on Tour. I just wanted to know why you picked Kabuki Man.
Well, but it was something that after Paul left, I started doing special effects too, and Toxie it's a mask. It's a polar mask. With Kabuki Man, I actually learned how to do the makeup. I do the makeup myself. I use the mask it came from, there were some, after Paul left, we found some of these masks around that weren't used, and I figured out how to put on makeup, and that's really where it came from, because the process of putting on that makeup is an hour to 2 hours, depending on how good you want it to look and how long you want it to stay on. And Troma's not hiring a makeup artist to do that every time. Kabuki Man's got to come out, but because I like the character, I know how to do it. I do it for free, basically.
I'm glad we got that story from you, because we're probably not ever going to interview Paul about anything. So Tromaville on Tour. So tell us about like what that was supposed to be and what it ended up being.
So Tromaville on Tour came from us doing the stage show for Citizen Toxic premiere. So we do these premiere parties, and then Kabuki Man would host. We had a game show called Win Andy Stroud's Liquor, the world's most dangerous game show, where you had, it was like Win Ben Stein's Money, but instead of money, it was liquor. So you answer trivia questions, you get a shot. 10 questions, 10 shots, lightning round at the end, and you're getting electrocuted. You have the electrocution device on your wrist and all this kind of stuff. And this was actually it goes into another story I'll tell you later, but one of the reasons I started my own company was because Troma wanted me to start taking the liability on myself. They're like, just a quick side, I guess. When you would ask me one of the more crazier Troma experiences, something I would want on my gravestone, basically. Michael Hers pulled me into his office after one of the situations where Gabe showed something on video. And it was at a Citizen Toxic premiere party. It was actually the band Friends Forever in the video. And I'll tell you, the video was, we had done Tromapalooza at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This was before the Warped Tour event. So we were really, because of Citizen Toxic, and I was doing all the marketing and getting all these connections. And Lloyd actually knew the head of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We got in there and did a G-rated show on the stage of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And then we went to the sleaziest dive bar in Cleveland afterwards and did the most, unintentionally, just happened to be the most R-rated, X-rated show. And Lloyd was there with his camera, filming it, encouraging it.
Of course.
It was, we had the Ultimate Tromette competition, which was a competition between Tromettes to, show their brains and their beauty. So they had, a talent portion. And these two Tromettes that were traveling with us, one, Melissa the Jester, was the winner of the Ultimate Tromette competition at Sundance, at the Troma Dance Film Festival.
Mm-hmm.
So she came out to Cleveland with us, and she was making out with another girl who was also part of the Tromette competition, rolling around in broken glass, and then a Troma fan said he could start vomiting on command, so he started vomiting on the floor. He's vomiting on the floor. They're rolling around in broken glass and vomit. The girl could smoke cigars out of her vagina, so there's video of that too. And then the guys from Friend Forever are playing on stage, this noisecore band that usually travels in a van and just pulls up in front of places and plays. And the guy is shitting on the stage. And I'm in the Kabuki Man outfit, like on the mic, emceeing, like, this is going on here. And I take a Troma Dance poster and slide it under where he's shitting so he doesn't actually shit on the stage. And Gabe cut all of this together in a nice 1-minute clip or something. And Michael Owners basically said, listen, you've done everything we've done in our movies except for actually kill someone at this point. And it's you gotta slow down. He didn't say you have to stop. He said you have to tone it down. You got to slow down.
Yeah, because where do you go from there, right?
It was literally like, it wasn't like I had brought all these people and said, okay, you're going to do this, 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 this. It was just a culmination of us traveling around the world and naturally meeting all these fucking weird people. And then everyone wanted to get it out because they censored our show at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame the night before, or during the day, Mm-hmm. And, that was one of the instances that Gabe tried to get me fired. And
do you have a copy of that tape?
I do not know. That's the only time I saw it was on a VHS player in Lloyd and Michael's office in front of both of them.
That's wild. So Tromaville on Tour was like, you have a group of people who you would eventually found backseat conceptions with. You had Nick and Zafar and like all these guys who had also worked in the Troma office or on Troma projects with you. Like,
on Troma's Edge TV, and they were helping to produce the shows that we were doing. They would go on the road with me and help me produce the stage show that we were doing at the after parties, And then one of those was in LA at the Knitting Factory, and Guttermouth opened, or was like the headlining band. We had a few other bands, and then in between we were doing all of these, the Ultimate Tromette competition and Annie Strap Liquor and all this stuff. And in the crowd was Kevin Lyman, the head of the Warped Tour. And he saw this. And if you've ever been to the Warped Tour, he's just trying to throw anything that's cool, anything that's weird in there. He's like on par with Lloyd, a mentor to me. Like Kevin Lyman and Lloyd Kaufman are the two people in the world I look up to, I would say. And he came to me. He's like, this is incredible. This needs to be on the Warped Tour. I'll give you guys some money. I'll find you some spicers. Come up with a proposal. And I was sleeping at the Troma office. A few of my friends, I think it was Zafar was there. I don't know if Nick made it after that one, but me and Zafar stayed up like 48 hours and wrote like a 10-page proposal. The Troma Dance Film Festival, Troma competition, How Punk Are You? Just a weird game show. So we had a stage. There was a tent that was showing the Troma Dance Film Festival. And then we kind of had carte blanche to just bring weird acts onto the Warped Tour. So we brought in the kids of Whitney High. We had Matt Besser from the Upright Citizens Brigade come and do some improv. Just weird stuff.
Too bad you couldn't get the kids of Whitney High to give a song for Citizen Toxie.
They are in Punk Rock Holocaust, though. We did kill them in Punk Rock Holocaust.
You inject their yoo-hoos, right?
Yeah, with reanimator fluid, so they should come back to life technically.
So I remember during Tromaville on Tour, because you and I would stay in touch like pretty constantly, because I was like, we had a running blog on the Troma. We made a Tromaville on Tour website that had like, you know, what was happening at the different stops, and like you would send me different photos and everything from the show. But it seemed like the longer it went on, the more problems seemed to creep up. I remember like, because you guys had either rented or bought an old school bus.
That was where it began. We bought so the Warped Tour gave us $10,000, which was unheard of for, I was getting on the level of Scott McKinley's sponsorship for Troma. And this was after Scott was gone. So they were like, okay, cool. Troma actually, I wouldn't say pocketed the money, but held the money and doled it out to us over the course of the Warped Tour in relation to how much money we were making for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it came from my business partners, Nick and Zafar, as part of this proposal back to Troma, like they wanted to say, how are we going to make money on this? We're not just going to use this money and send you guys out to fucking run crazy. And they put projections together on how many DVDs we would sell per day, and this would like pay for itself and this kind of thing. But we didn't think about the fact that the Warped Tour is mostly 14-year-olds who have no idea what Troma is, let alone like move there to see like Fall Out Boy or fucking Newfound Glory. They're not here to watch Troma movies, So
yeah,
it was amazing.
It makes sense on paper,
Troma.
but maybe not in practice, right?
Oh, I was that teenage boy who's like, oh, Tromaville on tour is not coming to Denver. God damn it.
Well,
it was supposed to. It was supposed to.
Yeah.
I remember that. Like,
so there was
that was one of the times when. So correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Doug. Because it was an old school bus from New York State, it had the motor had a thing on it called a governor, and what the governor does is ensure that the motor doesn't accelerate to what would be considered an unsafe speed. So because of that, when the school bus was following around the rest of the tour, as time went on, the bus got further and further behind because things would either break down or the governor would prevent it from going full speed. So there were dates that ended up just not being made because of like those technical issues.
That's exactly right. Yeah, pretty much the governor was something, none of us had ever owned a school bus before. And the school bus actually lasted for 10 years. It wasn't so much the school bus. Yeah, the speed on it was a factor, but we took care of that mostly by leaving 3 hours earlier than everyone else on the tour. So we had to wrap up and get out early. That's how we made half of the dates, by leaving early, really. Mm-hmm. And then the other part and this is really what killed the tour. If we didn't have to deal with all these repairs and put money towards things, we probably would have made it all the way. And we actually did make it, but halfway through we had to reconfigure things and this kind of stuff. But we had a trailer on the back of a school bus. And before I get into any more details, just tell anyone listening, never put a trailer on a school bus ever. It's not meant to happen. It's not supposed to happen. Because the back of a school bus, say the wheels are here and then it hangs out this much. And then there's a trailer over here and it goes up and down, and then the trailer hitch slowly rips apart. Mm-hmm. So it's connected like that. And every third or fourth stop, we have the back door open and slowly watching it rip away. Like, are we going to get further before it like falls off again? Are we going to get to the next stop so we can weld it back on? And we had it welded back together 3 or 4 times before we realized that this is just not working. We were in Florida, and the thing, it fell apart. It collapsed. And we had to put all of the DVDs and everything that was in the trailer onto the school bus.
Which was also your base of operations and where everybody was sleeping and everything. Yeah. It's not like you would take the bus to a new town, go stay in a hotel or something. It was like everybody was on that bus. And the Denver date specifically, like this won't make air, but like the Denver date specifically, I remember because I was supposed to meet you guys there at like 8 a.m. or something, and noon came around and you're like, I don't think we're going to make it in time. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, probably not if it's noon already and like the tour has already started. You guys got into town around like 3 o'clock. And then you're like, we're here. We're like hanging at like somebody's house that somebody knows. And I was like, okay, right on. And like, I came over and met you guys. But like, yeah, that whole thing with the Denver date, Zach, that's why you didn't get to see it, is because like that was one of the times when the confluence of issues just led to like,
That's why I bought my ticket to the Warped Tour.
I know, right? Well, it's funny too, because when I got there that morning, I was like, yeah, I'm with Troma when Tromaville on tour. And they're like, okay, go right in. And then over time, people kept coming up to me and they were like, where's your team? And I'm like, they're almost here. Like, I'm not sure. Cause like this was 2002. So like, you know, people
Barely
weren't texting.
cell phones, yeah.
Cell phones were still relatively new. And like, I was in touch with you, but I obviously didn't know exactly where you were. And eventually I was just like, yeah, you know, it was like a, you know, it's Troma. Like sometimes things just don't work out, was kind of what I started telling people.
Because the tour definitely knew. I mean, this was 11 guys on a school bus with no air conditioning. We maybe stayed in a hotel once a month. Yeah, we're on the road for 2.5, 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we actually did have some bands touring with us, and we were part of bands and this kind of stuff, but like it was more obviously about Troma stuff. But we were the most punk thing on the Warped Tour, basically. Like Rancid's touring around in like a coach bus with fucking air conditioning. We're sleeping on a gutter school bus, basically.
Yeah.
A school bus with all the seats gutted out. We built 10 bunks. Someone sleeps on like the seats in the front. I mean, you saw it.
Yeah, that bus smelled so bad. My God. It was just like body odor and fake blood and shit, and like just in a confined space for months at a time.
Probably just smelled like a Troma movie.
Dude,
Pretty much, yeah.
But it was concentrated because like, you know, it's like a, you know, 20 foot by 10 foot, whatever bus. Like everything in it was just like so heavily concentrated. It was like the absolute aroma du Troma.
Yeah. The bus actually is 55 feet long.
55. Okay.
Because I have another bus. It's not the same bus, but it's built the same way. It's basically 2.0 of that bus, because the first bus lasted 10 years, and then the transmission went on. And we actually did the Warped Tour probably 5 more times with it before the bus finally went. And it's parked. It's literally out to pasture. It's at our friend James Lynch. He has a house, his mother's house in Texas, and the transmission went on it. And rather than have it fixed, we just put it in the middle of this field. And there's all this grass growing up through the floor, like animals living in it and stuff now. But it has signatures, because there's pictures of it on the Facebook it's called Production Bus on Facebook now. I think there's pictures of the old one up there. And we had anyone that was on the bus, whether you were famous or not, we had you sign the bus. So the entire ceiling of the entire length of the bus and the walls covered in Sharpie, just with everything, you know?
Yeah, I think I signed that bus at some point.
Oh, I'm sure.
So I remember, like, you know, I really wish that, like, Lloyd and Michael cared a little bit more about our history in terms of preserving certain things, because in my ideal world, there's like, we have a warehouse like say like WWE does, where they store all their props, and like rather than like selling our props to fans on eBay and shit, I'd rather like live in an archive. And in my ideal world, in my mind, like the bus is also there, you know, of like, you know, because that was like a big moment in Troma's history. It was something we had never done before or since, really. Because I mean, it's fine if you don't want to get into this. I had been told at a certain point, like after the tour was over, I was talking to someone, and maybe it was Gabe, so I honestly don't remember. It was almost 20 years ago at this point. I was told by someone that part of the reason the plug was pulled on the tour was because your guys were just like drunk and stoned all the time and taking the money that was given to you and not using it for the tour. And I never thought that was true, but that was like a common, that became kind of an urban legend in Troma after the tour was over.
No, what had happened was we were expected to make the money every day to pay the employee, because everyone was supposed to get a $50 a day per diem. That was part of our whole plan.
Mm-hmm.
So we weren't sending, Troma wasn't sending us money, the money that we had gotten for them, because they expected us just to make it. So we had budgeted with that $10,000. This is enough to pay our employees and have us like actually live for 2.5 months on the road. And they said, no, your business plan says that you will make enough money to stay on the road. So we're going to hold on to this and you're going to make the money to stay on the road. And then when we didn't make enough money, they refused to send us the money and shut us down in Portland. And Nick and Zafir were my tour managers because I was still working full-time for Lloyd as his assistant and the head of production.
Mm-hmm.
So I was leaving the tour and coming back to New York. So I wasn't even on the road with them when the tour actually got shut down. I was in the home office trying to save the tour. And people were drinking, people were smoking, but we were doing what we had to do. And it wasn't the money going towards, what we were making or what little money we had, because we were using our life savings on this too, was going towards keeping us on the road. It certainly wasn't just going towards alcohol and drugs and shit, because we had all that for free pretty much. So.
Right. Yeah. It's funny too, because I remember talking with Lloyd at some point, and because sometimes he loves you, sometimes he hates you, and he's like those fucking guys, they were just fucking around. And I was like, dude, I was there for parts of it, and like everybody seemed on point. It's just like they were working with nothing, and the fact that they made anything happen is actually kind of miraculous with what they were given. Yeah.
Lloyd was there. Lloyd came. It was the same thing. When Lloyd's there, he's like, this is incredible. This is amazing. Wow, you guys are the best ever. And then he goes home and Michael tells him something else about money, and he just, he'll flip, like Michael says, no, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, when I was dealing with it, Lloyd was pushing to keep us going. And we did, because basically Nick and Zafir got fired halfway through the tour. And James Lynch, who had bought the bus, fronted the money for the bus because Troma was holding on to this money. And that's actually why we held on to the bus, because Troma never paid us for it. So we actually paid for the bus ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then put another $5,000 worth of work into it to get it ready for 11 people to live on it for 2.5 months in front of my parents' house, in front of my house I grew up in. For about 2 weeks, 11 guys were living in my driveway, and we had this bus parked in front of my house. And for the first few days, the neighbors were like, oh, this is cool, like novelty, fun. The next week, the ordinances in the town were changed, and they put a boot on the bus. And they're like, you need to get this eyesore out of here as soon as possible. It's like, well, you put a boot on it, so I'm not going anywhere. And they took the boot off to make us move.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then we came back after the tour, and there's shit written all outside the bus, and it says Charlottesville School for the Very Special on the top, like in actual school bus letters.
Uh-huh.
Obscenities, like people drawing penises and shit, all, when you look at it from far away, it looks like an art project. When you get close to it, it's very obscene. And
that's Troma in general, though, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
So you said Nick and Zafir were fired like in the middle of the tour. What led to that? Because
their projections didn't meet what they had said. That's literally the only reason they were fired, was because at Michael, it was like, hey, this is just business. You guys put a business plan. You understand this didn't work, and we have to let you go, And it was going to be cut your losses and just drive back. But we had so much invested in this already, and it would have been more expensive to just drive back across the country and not make any money, that James Lynch put together another business plan with, I helped him kind of, put together what I thought would work with it. And he took over the tour. So they were stranded in Portland for 5 days with no money and no food, and somehow connected with the Suicide Girls, as the Suicide Girls were just getting started. So they shot a movie called 4 Days in Panties while they were waiting for Troma to give them money to get back on the road. So there is a Suicide Girls movie that we shot that was, almost not really, it was not a documentary, but it was like about a crew of guys being on the Warped Tour, pulling up into town and one of them falls in love with a suicide girl, but it turns out she's a lesbian, so he dresses up like a woman to get with her. And then it culminates in a big party scene where everyone on the bus dresses up like women to get with the girls. And then the girls find out that they're guys and kill all of them.
So it's like a combination of like Chasing Amy and Mrs. Doubtfire and like a horror movie.
Yeah, and this was in 2002. Yeah.
Hey guys, this is Tiffany Shepis, and like the rest of you on here, the rest of you listening, I'm here to talk about Doug Sakmann. And what can one really say about Doug other than he was the best? But I remember when I first met Doug, it definitely was not Troma love at first sight. He annoyed the crap out of me. And before you guys get mad at me, I promise you, it gets better. But when I met Doug, he was loud, and he was messy, and he was crazy, and he got fake blood all over my outfit on like maybe the second time I met him, and I think he punched himself in the face to make it up to me. He broke things in the office, and he just seemed like a legit crazy person. I thought, who is this new breed of Troma kid that made all of the normal Troma alums, who were crazy, mind you, but made us look like Catholic schoolgirls? Well, meet Doug Sakmann. Little did I know that this kid, all right, well, he was only a few months younger than me, but this kid that drove me crazy and annoyed me and made me want to beat him up would turn out to be one of my favorite people to run into. I remember pretty specifically when my feelings for Doug changed. I'd stop by the Troma office to get something. I'm pretty sure, guys, it was something magnificent, like a Maniac Nurses Find Ecstasy DVD, or something equally awesome like Nymphoid Barbarian and Dinosaur Hell merch. And Kabuki Man, aka Doug. Guys, I'm going to let you in a little secret. Kabuki Man is Doug. Don't tell Uncle Lloyd I told you, but Kabuki Man is Doug. They're the same. Anyway, Kabuki Man was there, and he helped me find the stash. And while we searched for the merchandise that I was there looking for, we started talking, and we found out we had a mutual love of crazy B movies. We had a mutual love of obviously all things Troma. We had a mutual love for making fun of crazy Uncle Lloyd, and we just had a mutual love of art. We hung out in the office. We made prank phone calls from the Troma office landline. We did crazy bits for the Troma webcam, and we laughed the entire afternoon. My 5-minute run to the Troma office turned into hours just hanging out with Doug. He was a team player, and he was so funny, and he was so charming, and he was so nice. He was such a different person than I had thought. Like, the craziness, he was obviously like crazy and wild, but most of it was an act, and he was so good at it. This Doug, the real Doug, he was the best, and he quickly became my friend. And he asked me one time, I remember, like, he's like, how come you didn't like me when we first met? And I was like, dude, because you were more fun than the rest of us, and you were more punk rock than the rest of us, and you were crazier than the rest of us. So I guess it was professional jealousy, because Doug was cool as hell. And he was always making art, even if it wasn't something I wanted to see. Whenever I ran into him, he'd tell me about something new he was working on. And sometimes they were so cool, and sometimes they were so gross, and sometimes they were way too fucking weird. But they were always full of this excitement that made you want to root for them to work. It made you want to root for him. He was also just like this amazing cheerleader for other people making art, even when it sucked. I remember he'd come up to me at a convention and be like, oh my God, I saw this movie you're in and you're so good. And I'm like, Doug, this movie was not good. I was not good in it. But yet he was the biggest salesman and the biggest cheerleader for something that benefited him in no way. And it was incredible. And I have no doubt that that's what he's going to be doing in the next realm. And I just hope that when it's my time, I can meet up with Doug and have a cocktail at Kabuki's Cocktail Corner in the Sky, because we all miss and love him very much. Troma family for life.
We had a lot of big plans with it, but this was before the Suicide Girls got big, and they got big between us shooting it and actually coming out. And before it came out, they're like, we have other bigger things going on now, so we don't want you using the Suicide Girls name in this movie. And the whole thing was based around their brand, so we just couldn't release it. I mean, it could have been recut, but Nick, who got fired, he put his directions into this, and he could have released it, but he got so discouraged by what was going on with the Suicide Girl shit, he just like shelved it, never released it. It's done though. I have a VHS copy of it.
Like, one of the reasons we're doing this show is that there are so many aspects of Troma's history that people just don't know and haven't seen and haven't heard about, or they've only heard a specific narrative. And like, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is obviously just, I mean, we're friends and I haven't seen you in forever, but also like there's a narrative out there about you that I knew wasn't fully accurate and I knew was very one-sided.
I was entertained by those movies, and I don't really give a shit about what people think of me, I guess. I don't know. I mean, look, we were talking about All Love You Can now. Back then, I was like, wow, this is funny. Watching it a little older, I'm like, I could see why he would find me annoying, basically. that's about as far as I'm willing to go. I don't regret anything in any of the things I've done with Troma. I would just say, looking back now, I can see why some people might find me to be a little much. But even I was thinking about this back in, a little while ago when I was younger, and still now, like I do all kinds of stuff, different movies and projects, and get involved in weird shit. And people always say, "You're crazy. You're a maniac. Or whatever." Just the things that I do. And I always looked at like as a badge of honor kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But do some people look at it like I actually have a mental illness, like crazy in that way?
I think there are people who are willing to embrace the weird, and there are people who aren't, and the people who aren't don't understand the people that are. And I think that because I tell people about some of the Troma stuff that I've done, and people look at me like I'm fucking insane or something. And like Zach too, people are like, hey.
Well, it's funny. So the Summer Poultry Geist, I was building that poop cannon for the bathrooms, and my sister, she was in the military designing the satellite that they used to find Osama bin Laden at the same time. And I was like, yeah, but we really know who our parents are proud of the most is the poop cannon.
Oh my God. That is so funny.
I do want to pivot a little bit though and talk about Troma Dance, because you were also, that's going to be one of our episodes is about Troma Dance. I've slummed the streets in Park City as well. Got drunk in the Toxie Mask like you're supposed to. So I want to know, can you tell us in your own words the infamous Robert Redford can suck my cock story?
Yeah, it's highlighted in episode 16 of Troma's Edge TV. That was actually, Lloyd let me tell my part of the story there, basically. So, being a young, impressionable Tromite, Robert Redford was the enemy number one of Troma and Troma Dance, because he was not sticking up for truly independent cinema. And starting out, I understood the basics of it, but I didn't really understand what Lloyd was talking about, really. I kind of, I get what you're saying. The making conglomerate's the only world. He's part of it. They're catering to the studios and this kind of thing. But then once we got out there and I saw what was happening, I got really fucking pissed about it.
It's crazy.
It's insane. It is literally like Nazi Germany. I don't want to say that because it's much worse, but it was that vigilant, like Russia. It was a communist society, one party.
Yeah, it was kind of a totalitarian, sort of regime.
Like they would have like the big studio guys standing by the kiosks ready to rip down Troma's stuff as soon as it went up. I'm sure it was like that for you guys too.
Well, it was a thing where the first year they were not prepared for us. There were no laws in place about other film festivals coming because they had a few of these satellite film festivals, nothing like Troma coming in and just trying to take over the town, you know? So we came in the first year in 99, right? I think it was 99.
Yeah.
And we took them by storm. We had a smaller venue at the bottom of Main Street, and we made a big noise. Everyone knew what we were doing. Troma was the biggest party there. Everyone had a great time. The next year we came back. Sundance literally imposed all of these laws because they hold the master festival license in Park City, and they spend so much money, economic development into the town and all this kind of stuff, that they're able to change the laws of the city for the time that they're there. So you're not allowed to engage in a promotional conversation of any type. You're not allowed to distribution of handbills is illegal unless you're affiliated with the Sundance Film Festival. And then they had Sundance approved kiosks that, like you said, if you posted anything else that wasn't Sundance, someone was a guard, wasn't really a guard, a guy in like a fucking parka and like a beanie come up and would rip it down right in front of you. Just crumble it up, not say a word, throw it in the garbage can, whatever, and just go back to standing there. And then they had 3 kiosks that were for all of the other independents in Park City. So it was like we all had to not fight, but compete with all of our peers to promote what we were trying to do, you know? So if Troma Dance has 30 filmmakers and they're all trying to promote their screening individually, that board's covered already, you know? And then there's other film festivals on top of that. It was just... so we were trying to find ways around the marketing techniques. The best one was we had the flyer and we would drop it on the floor and like, oh, I dropped something. Can you pick that up? And then they go pick it up and it's like, actually, you can keep it. I don't need it anymore. It's like, all right, well, that's one way around that. And then,
or if you could go into the businesses, you were allowed to hand them a flyer, but you couldn't do it on the street.
Yeah, it was that might have been a new one because they were probably trying to modify it so it wasn't crazy. Because at that point, Troma was getting ready on their way out already, and all the other film festivals that were trying to get him were screwed. They were fucked, you know. So, as the festival director and the head of the whole parades and stuff, I would lead all the volunteers up and down, just like at the Cannes Film Festival with the picket signs, the Troma independent art, thoughts, Troma Dance, all that stuff. And we'd have Mad Cowboy and Dolphin Man. Sometimes I'd put on Kabuki Man. Sometimes I'd go out of myself. Toxie, of course, Killer Condom, parade of 20 to 30 people walking up and down the street. Nonstop, just Troma Dance. And we got up to the bulletin board. And I think we were at the point where we weren't putting up the flyers. We would just stand in front of the board and talk to no one specifically. So we weren't breaking any laws. We were just kind of talking to each other loudly and this kind of stuff. And I said, you know what? Sundance isn't independent. Robert Redford can suck my cock. And an undercover police officer came from across the street, walked over. As we were like, I finished. It wasn't even like right away. It was, he let us finish up. Everyone started walking, and I was the last one trying to like keep everyone moving along. And he grabbed me and threw me into an alleyway and handcuffed me against the wall, like to not, so no one else I was with would see. My friend James Lynch, actually, who I didn't even know at the time, he came in as a volunteer. I met him that day briefly, but I was dealing with 30 other people. He was in a Mad Cowboy costume. He saw what was going on, and he came back around the corner, and they arrested him too. And we went to jail for distribution of leaflets and disturbing the peace.
I'll have you know, I yelled Robert Redford can suck my cock on Park City streets, the ones I went to, and I did not get arrested. So
I made an example.
Yeah.
Yeah. As someone who had that job just a year or two after you did, the That is a thankless, grueling position because everything is on you to get enough people to the festival to justify the investment and to like create the press hype around it. And I did that for 3 years, and I'm not sure how I lasted that long because each year I had more responsibility. Coming up to 2005, like Jonathan Lees had burned out and it was just me like running the whole festival. And that was a goddamn nightmare. Like trying to keep everybody together, like trying to make sure that like nobody got arrested or nobody got accosted. Like I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. But after 2005, I was like, I'm never doing this again. Like it takes so much out of you as a person because you're fighting against everything.
The man and the Troma team and then the cold.
I mean, you know, being from Colorado, the cold didn't bother me so much, but like just the fact that like, you know, Sundance had like entire departments dedicated to like stamping out the other festivals and having to fight against that constantly when it was like, hey man, we just want to show movies and have a good time was probably one of the more demoralizing Troma experiences for me.
Well, there's that, but because it's also you're expected to promote and make an event successful that is free. You're not making any money on it.
Right.
You can't charge tickets because it's no entry fees, no admission fees, no fees to submit your movie. So you, I'm sure you know, watching hundreds, if not thousands of movies, making decisions on top of getting the program together, getting the flyers together, getting a venue, finding sponsors, finding people to pay for this. And this is, we had Scott McKinley at the beginning of it, so he was really good at getting the spot. We had Hawaiian Tropic as one of the sponsors. You know, they did a Hawaiian Tropic swimsuit contest.
Yeah.
And
my first year, we had Jägermeister, and that was fucking rad.
Yeah. I mean, it's and none of those companies are sponsoring anything now. If they are, it's not money. They'll give you some product, you know. But back then, they were throwing, $10,000-$20,000 at things, you know.
Mm-hmm. I remember, I forget which year it was, but there was one year where we had Rockstar Energy. And not only did they give us money, but they shipped an entire pallet, probably 500 cans of Rockstar Energy to the condo. It just showed up in the driveway.
Oh, man.
And so everybody was hopped up on Monster on Rockstar for like the entire week. It was nuts.
They did that one of the years we were there, and then Patron was like sponsoring something at Sundance, so we just became friends with the Patron people and would trade bottles of tequila for Rockstar, and then we would just walk around the main strip just dumping Patron in our empty Rockstar cans and just like hey, Rainn Wilson, come to Troma Dance.
But I mean, that is one of the perks of the job is there's always people willing to give alcohol and drugs to the Troma team.
I loved being Toxie because I was broke and everybody wants to buy the Toxic Avenger a shot.
Oh yeah.
Like they're like, I'm gonna do a drink with Toxie. Do you have any favorite movies that you remember from Troma Dance?
Ooh, from Troma Dance, I actually put together the first Best of Troma Dance Volume 1. So I would say those are all my top ones on there. The Die You Zombie Bastards prequel, Red's Breakfast 1 and 2, Zit Lover,
that movie is gross. I love that one.
Oh yeah. Please Kill Mr. Kinski. Pretty much everything that's on that DVD. And then I don't even think it's hidden. I think the Troma Dance episode is on there too.
Yeah,
on the first Troma Dance DVD.
Yep.
So those are definitely some of those. Actually, the guy did Please Kill Mr. Kinski, David Schmoller, ended up connecting with him on another movie he did years later. We showed it at our Backseat Film Festival, a movie called Little Monsters, not related to the Fred
Howie
Savage
Mandel. And then it seemed like you had a bit of a hiatus, like during like Poultrygeist and all that. But then you said you got into Return to Nukem High because they were looking for extras for a weekend. But then you like really stepped up. And in the behind the scenes, I think it shows that you really helped get that production over the line.
Yeah, I think I got a production coordinator credit by the end of it or something. And then special effects supervisor, because I ended up kind of coming in with a lot of super amazing special effects artists on the movie, but there was some animosity between them and they weren't talking to each other properly. And actually, it was more the animosity between not so much the special effects artist, but special effects artist and the DP. So the guy who was shooting the effects and the effects people, by the time I got there, were not talking to each other. So it was telephone. I had to coordinate all the things that they had planned for the day and then go explain to the DP how we were going to shoot everything.
Hello, my name is Chris Seaver, and I'm a writer and director of comedy horror films. And I was friends with Doug Sakmann for 25 years. And in those 25 years, Doug and I did a lot of fun and weird shit together. And there was some of the things that I loved about Doug was the fact that he would push you, and the pushing you was in the form of motivation. It wasn't a bully push. He would notice your reluctance to, while shooting a project, he would notice fatigue or being upset with the way things are going and any myriad of things that could bring a person down during a shoot. And Doug definitely dug his heels in, if you will, and he pushed you, but not, like I said, not in a bully way. It was a pure motivation. It was, come on, we got this, we can do this, I can see that, yes, we're all tired, but let's fucking go. And many a project would get finished, much to my chagrin, even if I was ready to all right, let's call this a day and let's pick this up at a later time. Doug would push me through. Doug would motivate me through to make sure that I was still getting what I wanted, and made me laugh. We did it with a smile. And Doug went through life like that. Doug, he was a whirling dervish of chaos, smiles, motivation, insanity. He just, you got to push through that pain and bring a smile to it every single day, good or bad, whatever it was. He challenged that day to make it a fun one, make it a smiley one, make it a productive one. And you knew at the end of that day, it was good. It was right. We got more shit done, and it was worth it. And the smiles and the laughs were all worth it as well. Another thing I loved about Doug, and I'm this way as well, is that it didn't matter when you saw him. You could have a year break where you didn't see him, but somewhere in there you would get a random text just checking in, just saying, "Hey man, thinking about you. I love you." I'm like that with all my friends, and Doug was like that as well. Time would pass, but once you pick back up with him, it was like no time had passed. And I really love that about Doug. He cared, and he cared about everybody, and he touched so many people. And there's a reason why, there's thousands of human beings out there who love Doug Sakmann and who are touched by Doug Sakmann and are affected by his passing. I think we're all sort of better for being in that special little Doug Sakmann club. He made us feel like we were special, like we were, not just a part of his crew, but just, if you brought him into your crew, he just, he made it worth it. He made it special. And, yeah, man, I'm going to miss Doug. I love him. And I hope he knew just how loved he was.
So when did you leave Troma full time? Was it like 04, 05, somewhere in there?
No, it was, we did Tromaville on tour in 2002. And then we came back from the tour and I went back to the office and went back to doing everything I was doing. I think I did Tromanance in 2003. And that was my last big event with Troma, I think. That we started getting ready for the Cannes Film Festival. And it was something you would ask earlier about the fun things we did with Troma. And while everything was fun and amazing, we kind of were getting the schedule. It was Tromanance, then right into the Cannes Film Festival. And then by the time we're done with Cannes, we're starting with Tromanance again. We'd have have a production. So there's always something going on in the middle of that, but it was just these landmark events that would take months out of my life to just focus on that,
Mm-hmm.
And then we did the stuff with the Warped Tour. Obviously that didn't go over so well. We finished, we got a feature-length documentary out of it, but this is actually the part of the reason why I left Troma was we did the Tromaville on Tour documentary. We were kind of starting up this Backseat Conceptions company because Lloyd wanted me to take responsibility for the legalities of some of the things we were doing. And we had an editor who was working with us under Backseat Conceptions. And because the tour didn't go as we had planned and some people got fired, the documentary is what you would see on reality television now. It actually is an expose that shows Troma, what was both sides of this. We weren't trying to say Troma's horrible or anything like that, but you're actually seeing what Troma's doing to these guys. We can't eat because we don't have money.
Mm-hmm.
Lloyd's on the phone. We're not sending you money. Or Michael's on the phone. I don't think Lloyd ever said that. But, so we had this feature-length documentary, and we showed it to Lloyd, and Lloyd was, it wasn't terrible. It didn't paint anyone in a terrible light, but it showed the realities of what was going on. Lloyd actually, contractually, we gave him a copy of all the master tapes. So he at one point had a copy of all of our Tromaville on Tour tapes, and Gabe was going to attempt to do his own version of it. And then we took what we had and showed it to the head of the Warped Tour, and it was done in a Troma documentary style, not a Warped Tour documentary style. And the head of the Warped Tour said, you can release this movie as is and never work with me again. Or you can rework this movie. We'll work together and see what happens with it. But let's have you back on the tour again and have you do something else. Troma definitely wasn't going. So we did Punk Rock Holocaust. I made my first feature-length horror movie, slasher movie. Based, it's kind of a documentary about the Warped Tour wrapped around a horror movie, essentially. It's all the bands from the tour and getting killed and acting badly.
Some of them better than others.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good bad movie. It's a Troma movie,
Yeah,
it is.
It's a fun movie.
I brought my
it,
copy to Poultrygeist, hoping that you would show up so I could have you sign it. It was in my bag the whole time.
I can send you. I can sign you. We got a 15-year anniversary of the first two movies that came out 5 years ago now, and next year will be the 20th anniversary of being released.
Nice.
So crazy.
So you said the the head of the Warp Tour saw it and was like, if you release this, then we can't work together again. Like, what was...
He said it would destroy the Warp Tour because there were a lot of questionable things. It was behind the scenes of the Warp Tour, you know?
Okay.
In an R-rated way.
Is it kind of a lot of the stuff that's coming to light now about what happened in that era of the Warp Tour?
No. It's nothing like that. It's just us being maniacs and doing crazy shit on the Warp Tour and video of what kids actually do at the Warp Tour. Like video of like people that we were interacting with, what they would do, you know? And they all signed releases and stuff. So it was all legal and by the books and stuff, but it did not make the youth of America look good.
So I mean, yeah, so there definitely would be a concern there about like how potential sponsors might take that, and
they would lose sponsors. They would get shut down if it was construed in that way. You know, guy from the Warp Tour wasn't going to work with us if we couldn't use it, and I wanted to keep working with him. Mm-hmm. That was part of it, and then the other big part of it was all of my friends were working for Troma while we were on the Warp Tour. And then we came back, and they all had to go back to their regular whatever they were doing beforehand, and I was just going back to working at Troma, you know? Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, we had formed this bond, and we're starting a company. So we did, you know, I left to start Backseat Conceptions, basically. So it was something where early 2003, maybe it might have even been the end of 2002. I don't think I even did Tromanance in 2003.
So in your post-trauma career, and we'll start wrapping up because I know we've been taking up a lot of your time. Your post-trauma career, like you started Backseat Conceptions, and then that grew out of Tromaville on Tour, and you started doing like Backseat Film Festival. It kind of took a lot of the same ideas and stuff that you had been doing under the Troma banner and doing it with your team that you had assembled for the tour. And then I know, like after that too, you also spent some time working with Burning Angel, which I noticed is not on your resume on your website.
Well, obvious reasons, you know.
Sure.
I mean,
but that led me to an interesting question, I think, was like, so, you know, you spent a lot of time working for Troma and you know, doing a lot of wacky stuff for the company. Like, how did that environment compare with the environment in the porn industry?
Well, in a weird way, I mean, you know, the type of movies I've worked on and produced and directed and stuff, it was a natural progression. It literally was just like, okay, we're doing a porno parody of Reanimator or The Triple Exorcist or Evil Head later. But it was treating it as I'm making a fun horror movie. And then when it comes to the sex scenes, we're actually shooting porno, you know? So that's why I think they were so successful, is because it was more about the plot and the situations, and you know, the sex is good and stuff, but then even that has elements that you're not going to see in another porno, in a regular porno, you know,
the bloody Sanchez.
Exactly. And unintentionally, because I don't think I even really knew about Lloyd's career before Troma. It's, you know, I just went backwards. I worked for Troma and then I got into the porn industry. But it's something that, you know, when you were saying going through what we did the Backseat Film Festival in 2003 in Park City. I totally forgot about that. So we were there with you guys.
That's right.
There was a little bit of a weird thing because it was like,
because it was like the Troma crew and the previous, like the formerly Troma crew.
Yeah,
but we had similar ideas, but we were doing different things.
Yeah, and we were friendly towards each other, but it was like not a bad a weird breakup. Like I would talk to Lloyd and we were friendly, but for a little while there, I feel like he felt that I betrayed him or something. Not betrayed. We never talked about it, but I always felt that there was something that
there was tension.
A little bit of tension, you know, because
hey, Doug, you look well.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
It's like running into your ex-girlfriend at a concert with like her new boyfriend.
It was a little bit like that. And even how I left Troma was a little bit weird because it was something where it was after the Warped Tour and after we did something else, I was like, I really need to take a break for a little while. And I told him I was going on hiatus. I never really quit the company. I left a note because I told him it was coming, and then I was just like, okay, I'm leaving on this hiatus. I'm not sure if I'm going to come back, kind of thing. And I left a note. It was like, Lloyd, Michael. I think I might have left the same note for both of them, but it was like, this isn't goodbye, but I don't know how long I'm going to be away for, kind of thing, But I did use the word hiatus, and I never went away.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I can't speak for Lloyd, but I think, you were his boy for a long time. Like you kind of took his ideas and ran with them, and then also made it your own and made a lot of special things. And he seemed to have a bond with you that I don't think he's had with too many other people who were in that position. Because he always backed you up on stuff wherever he could. And even when people were trying to sabotage your career, Lloyd always defended you. Except when he was in a manic episode, which
well, the thing is, he always knew what we understood each other 100%. Actually, we've never had any kind of argument in any way, and I've never had him actually really yell at me, except for the end of the Shitstorm documentary. That was the first fight we've had in 20 years, I guess, when we shot that 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I don't know. But it's very public. So we shot it. Yeah, that's why it's a blur, because
in the before times.
Yeah,
it was 2018 we shot it, so that was 5 years ago. Wow. Okay, so 20 years ago, it took 20 years for me and Lloyd to have a fight, and it was because we were set up by the fucking DP. So it wasn't even, it was something where he wasn't understanding what I was trying to say, where I had worked with the DP to engineer all of these shots for a month. And then at the last minute, the DP backed out on what we had said we were doing and decided to do something completely different. And it was just like, why did we even build it this way if you said you're not going to shoot it this way, It's a whole thing. It's even out of context. It's too much. It was the shit pipes. It was this whole thing with the shit pipes and the shitstorm. If you watch that scene, it was supposed to be all of these dynamic shots of people looking up at pipes and the pipes coming down in the same shot, looking like it's in different areas of the ship and all this stuff. And now it's just one shot of a pipe cutting back and forth with a bunch of people standing in the same place over and over again. You don't notice it because it's edited so well, but we just kept having people stand, get shit on, then they go away, more people come in, they get shit, and it's all into the same pipe, and it's one shot of one pipe.
Yeah.
But it should have been the whole boat, just shitting all over the place.
That's just one of many things in that movie that don't make a lot of sense.
Well, it was engineered to make a lot more sense, and it wasn't cut together or shot that way. So I feel, in working with Troma, because I've been working on every single movie since Citizen Toxic. Even Poultrygeist, I wasn't involved with the production, but I did deal with some of the pre-production of that. And I even wrote an alternate script because it wasn't always about chicken zombies. It was Lloyd wanted to make a zombie movie, and he put it out in the office. Trent wrote a script. I wrote a treatment. I didn't really write a full script because I just wanted to see what he thought of it first. And then Gabe sort of came up with Poultrygeist. You want to hear some things about that?
Sure. I do.
So I do a thing in Chicago. We're hoping to bring it back this year called Night of the Stripping Dead. And it's a horror burlesque show at the biggest strip club in Chicago. And we bring in different horror movie celebrities to host it. We had Lloyd come in one year. We did a whole Troma thing. And a few years back, we had Michael Berryman from The Hills Have Eyes come in and host it.
Wizards of the Demon Sword.
Yeah, he's great. And he's super friendly, very talkative, very down to earth. Like, we've had other celebrities come in, they kind of come do their thing, they're friendly, they take off. He was hanging out with us the whole time. And when we told him we worked with Troma, he's like, oh, fucking Lloyd, I gave him that title, Poultrygeist. I was at some, convention, and we had dinner together with a bunch of people, and I made a joke about Poultrygeist, something, said Poultrygeist. And Lloyd said, that's going to be the name of my next movie. can you write on a napkin that you're giving me the rights to the name of this movie? So according to Michael Berryman, Gabe didn't come up with Poultrygeist. Michael Berryman did. So if you believe that line of thinking, then Michael Berryman put, it writes itself. Poltergeist. It's a parody of Poltergeist. It's not even that original of a movie. It is an original movie, but again, it's a parody.
Although if it's a parody of Poltergeist, God damn it. If it's a parody of Poltergeist, then it would be a ghost movie, not a zombie movie.
Well, it's the thought that something's built on an ancient Indian burial ground.
That's true. Yeah, right.
They're possessed. It's more Evil Dead than zombies.
So when we were shooting, they have the little girl in the movie, and the chicken zombies are running down the stairs, and the little girl says they're coming, and then as we were wrapping, we were like, why didn't she say they're here? And everyone's like, oh fuck.
Oh my god! Wow, that's crazy.
Someone should have ADR'd that in.
Yeah.
I mean, they ADR everything else. Why the fuck not?
No shit, right?
Oh no, that's a goofy knife.
Oh my god, he's got an afro.
Sean McGrath might be the most prolific actor in Troma's history, if for no other reason than he does 35 voices in every movie.
Yeah.
From Terror Firmer on to Tales from the Crapper. It's fucking insane.
Very true. Yeah, he's in a lot. I could hear his voice in my head.
So a couple of things are going to wrap it up. But one, I want to know what cool stuff you ended up from any of the productions or from The Office.
Stuff from The Office. I guess the coolest thing, it's from All the Love You Can. It's the recycling sign that I think we destroy in the movie, right?
The Toxie, yeah.
I'd save the Toxie head. So I have that going into my basement.
Oh, yeah.
When we're promoting that, you should send us a picture of you holding that Toxie head. I think that'd be a pretty funny postscript.
Yeah, I'm all about that. And that actually is a good example of how they make us look in that movie versus what actually happened. Is in that movie, it makes us look like we're going to destroy this sign because Scott made it. We're destroying it because Lloyd didn't want to pay for the shipping to go back to the United States. So he told us to destroy it.
I watched it last night, and I was like, well, yeah, they're destroying it because they're clearly not. That sign's huge. They're not going to bring that back.
That's exactly why. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was one solid piece. It's not like you can fold that and stick it in somebody's luggage.
I mean, it cost probably $100 to make. It's a piece of chloroplast. No, it was like foam core board. It was nothing. It was foam core. They printed up a sheet of whatever. They put the sheet over it. The most expensive thing was the Toxie fucking head, and it's like a hand holding a mop that I think Tim Considine made, who did the makeup on Citizen Toxie.
That's cool.
R.I.P. Unfortunately.
Hey, Troma fans. This is Zach Amico, assistant director or associate director on Return to Nukem High Volumes 1 and 2 and Shakespeare's Shitstorm also appear in the movies. I'm here to give a few words about Doug Sakmann. Doug was one of the most influential people in my entire life. Like many of you, my first exposure to Doug, and exposure is the right word, was through All the Love You Can and Troma's Edge TV. When Doug was the head of production for Troma, I met him at countless festivals. Doug was an indescribable force. It was like trying to hang out with a hurricane. He was lightning in a bottle, and unfortunately, it was a Jack Daniels bottle. For a lot of that time, there is no one on earth that's as much fun as Doug. He was the most energetic, incredible, inspiring person. I first saw him on DVDs when I was a kid, and I had the pleasure of meeting him and then starting to work for him. And then I had the privilege of bringing him in to Return to Nukem High after he'd been away from Troma for about a decade. Doug got fired from Troma after the editors had made a compilation of all the times he broke the law while filming with Troma, most of the time dressed as Kabuki Man. And Michael Hers had to call Doug into his office and say, Doug, you've done everything we do in our movies except kill someone. So I need to let you go before that happens. He was just... I said this at his service. Very few people even see a shooting star in their life, much less spend their life living around one. Doug was the first guy to be up in the morning helping everybody. He never complained. He worked harder than anyone I know. He was always inspired. He was always happy. He was the guy that would give you the shirt off his back. And I know that's a cliche thing to say, but everywhere Doug went, he made a million friends and annoyed the shit out of everybody else that was around him. From the zombie crawls to countless productions, Doug was just the greatest guy. And I feel so lucky that I got to spend so much quality time with him or on the bus. For those that don't know, Doug had the backseat bus, and they toured on this bus, and he had just gotten it redone before he passed. But man, it used to stink. My first job, Doug hired me as a PA on a movie, and first day, first job, I had to empty out the toilet on the bus, which was sloshing around to the point that it was coming up. And me and my friend Dave Temple had to carry it through a park and dump gallons of piss in a public park. I remember it smelled like bologna. And there was nothing like, you knew the bus was going to be stinky when Doug would pull up in it, and it would have like 85 air fresheners on it, and you would hear it sloshing as anytime he stopped short. I have a million Doug stories, and I think everyone that hung out with him does. I can think of so many nice places we've been asked to leave, not so nicely. I could think of a million times where he opened up his door to people or went out of his way to take care of somebody that needed him, or he was just always there. And he was always the best friend anybody could ever ask for. And I miss him and I love him. And more, I want to thank his family for sharing this incredible person with the world. And I know it couldn't have been easy to have him hopping and bopping around the way he did. But God, we're all so fucking lucky to have a guy like Doug Sakmann in our lives. And I think all we can do is try to keep making art and loving each other and supporting one another. And, I don't know where we go, but I hope wherever I wind up, when I get to the entrance, I just hear, hey, hey, hey. And I'm down. Because, God, I fucking love the guy so much. And if you knew him, you were just so lucky. And if you never met him, that's the real people I feel bad for. But luckily, he left so much art and incredible stuff. And there's going to be years of videos and pictures and stories and podcasts. And he's just the most unforgettable, wonderful person. And I miss him very much. And I thank you guys for this opportunity to get to talk about him. And I love you, Dougie.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, because it's been a little bit since I've seen it, but like they intercut that. Gabe intercuts that with like Scott's reaction to give the impression that, yeah, you're doing it specifically to like fuck Scott over or to like take a jab at Scott.
Well,
I was think, like, that's kind of a weird thing because
there's so much stuff to explain in that documentary. Yeah, we should do a commentary track.
I was going to say, would you be willing to do an exclusive commentary for that?
Oh, definitely.
Like,
yeah,
we'll set something up and we can do a commentary.
And full disclosure too, like as part of this like deep dive research we're doing, we do plan to interview Scott.
Great.
So,
we should have us both on.
Because I do want to, in the interest of fairness, at least like get his side of things.
Oh, certainly.
But also, like my primary reason for wanting to interview him is about Tromaville.com. But that's also like All the Love You Can is what he's known for outside of, the people who worked with him. So hopefully we'll be able to talk to him, and, hopefully we'll get some sort of nice back and forth to continue the world's oldest Troma rivalry.
Well, I can tell you some stuff about Chelsea the Crapper. I can tell you something about that too. But All of You Can, where all of the stuff that is Scott being interviewed was shot 2 years after he was fired, or at least a year after he was fired. Like, he was already fired. Mm-hmm. He was fired the second he hit that girl. That's in the video at the end of the thing. He fled the country. So, like, it was something where he was drunk. It was the culmination of that year at Cannes. And some shit was going on with the party. Scott was, like, doing VIP, what it's supposed to be no VIP treatment. He was, like, holding our Troma people at the gate so his people could get in. Mm-hmm. And he was saying it was because, the beach is at capacity, and these are our investors. They have priority. It's like, that's not what we're talking about here. I mean, I get what you're trying to do, but you can't just have the people who flew halfway around the world not in this party, They're all out in the street. So that's why I was getting in his face about that shit. And he didn't actually punch me. That was a sound effect that was added. Obviously, he just pushed me like that. Mm-hmm. But he did that sound that girl made hitting the ground. That actually was the sound she made. Like, he was violently drunk. His girlfriend was trying to stop everything that was happening. She was, like, trying to pull him off of both of us. And then this Tromette came up and, like, to pull him off of me. And then she threw her down on the ground. And he knew it was over for him. He fled the country. So when I'm yelling for him, he's already packing. He's already back in his hotel room packing his bags. The next morning, he was in Italy. He wasn't even there. Lloyd's like, we need to talk. He's like, I left.
So, okay. So that leads me to an important question then. If he fled immediately after that happened, when did the incident with you peeing in his bag take place?
After he was gone, he had left a bag behind, and we weren't going to send it back to him. So again, it looks like I was just peeing in his personal bag, but it was like a promo bag for the Cannes Film Festival. I just peed in it and threw it on the roof. But that was cut from the Troma Now version of the documentary.
Yeah, I noticed
really?
That. Yeah, I watched that when I was watching it yesterday. I was like, wait a minute.
It's gone.
I'll have to ask Kyle about that. I wonder why. Maybe, I don't know.
They just grabbed the wrong tape and uploaded the wrong one.
No, I don't think that's it.
That's intentional. That's definitely intentional.
That's intentional. I wonder, I mean, it had to be done at probably Lloyd or Michael's request. Maybe they didn't want, like, because it's like your real dick in the shot, like actually peeing. Maybe they didn't want someone actually peeing on the video. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's actually a good point. Like, it might get into, like, pornographic stuff because it's actual pee.
Yeah.
Oh, and maybe something with Vimeo or whatever.
I don't think Vimeo would care, but I think it's one of those things where, because there's...
Well, it's like the pay server. Like, porn companies have to have a certain type of pay server that allows them to have that content. Troma Now probably doesn't have that,
Well, it's also... No, we don't. And it's the Apple thing, too. When Apple reviews your app, if there's anything in it that they find objectionable, they won't allow it in.
So they probably took it out before they even wanted to open that door,
That'd be my guess.
Because, I mean, you've seen what's going on with YouTube and all this shit. They constantly have to censor themselves to try and be in the places where they can make money. It sucks.
So a couple things to wrap this up. Can you give me your best Lloyd impression?
Hey, that's about it.
What about Michael?
Whew, just a cold, dead stare. I don't know.
Perfect.
Having been subject to that stare in various circumstances, I agree.
Yeah.
Every time I get an email from him and he tells me to call him, like, I get a sense of dread.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I never had any major falling outs with Michael just because I knew I would never talk to him unless I had good news or money for him. That's the only time I would talk to him. I can do a good Maris impression. Oh my God, Michael! Oh my God, Michael! He's doing it again, Michael!
That's solid. That is really solid. Well, Doug, thank you so much. I mean, man. We're going on 2.5 hours here, so I don't want to take up your whole Saturday.
No, I know there's so much more. I mean, and everything we talked about, there's more I wanted to say, but I went off on other tangents about and stuff. So
we got lots
plenty
of good stuff, though.
Yeah, and we can always circle back too, like if there's something you think of or extra questions we have, because like in this whole process of like what we're doing for these new episodes, you're actually the first interview that we've done. So I'm sure we'll hear things from other people that will want to get your perspective on. So this is a really great starting point, though, and I thank you for the time.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, if you want to do some more interviews and then circle back, and if you want to send me like a list of things you want to hit, so I can think a little bit more about it first or whatever, however you want to do it.
And I would love to do a commentary for All the Love You Can.
Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, we're talking about doing a Patreon for the show, and that would be a really cool thing to put out as like a paid extra for people, because I think there are a lot of people would be interested in that, because like that's something that has become the Troma lore,
so much mythology and all that is from that documentary.
And that was like around the time, it was like Troma's version of Jackass almost, mixed with all the documentary stuff they've done before, and it wasn't even intentional. It wasn't like we were trying to do that or be that. It was just the time and what naturally was happening, basically.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the time, man. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
You too, man. Take it easy.
We'll catch up soon. Have a good weekend.
You too, brother. Peace.
Right. Peace.
You can't write an ending for something like this. You shouldn't have to, and we shouldn't be making this episode, but I'm glad that we are, and that people could listen to some of these funny stories, and that is, meant a lot. I didn't get to work with Doug on any movies, and I've felt bad about that. And one of my friends pointed out that I didn't need to get to work with him, and it was on the show interviewing him, and that I can take solace that we have actually worked together. So that's pretty cool to think about. But there's plenty of art that's still out there to be made. Blood that's just sitting in barrels that needs to get squirted around. Topless punk rock dancers that need to be captured on celluloid, and punk bands and mayhem all around the world that need to be seen and heard. And independent art will keep living on. And as long as there is a bug sprayer filled with blood, Doug's memory will always live on.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks.
And thank you all for listening.
Good night.
Robert Redford can suck my cock! Yahoo! Robert Redford can suck my cock! Yeah! Robert Redford can suck my cock! Robert Redford can suck my cock! Yeah! Robert Redford can suck my cock! Yeah! Robert Redford can suck my cock! Robert Redford can suck my cock! Robert Redford can suck my cock! Robert Redford can suck my cock!
This has been a listener-supported production of Loudspeaker Studios. For more on this and other programs, visit loudspeaker.org.